They'd like to discuss the zoning issues.
Yep. Mixed-use zoning.
We'd like to come out, go from first.
I was gonna sit there. Who's sitting here? Jacob. I saw you sitting here, Jacob.
Hello.
Meeting called to order. Please join me in prayers. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for a direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please join me in the allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Chow,
Here.
Council Drinkwater,
Here.
Council Getchia,
Here.
Council Janess,
Here.
Council Leahy, Council Mercia,
Here.
Council Noon,
Here.
Council Robinson,
Here.
Council Rourke,
Here.
Council Scott,
Here.
Council Yem,
Here.
10 present.
Any memorial service? Any? Councilor Murcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in Darkened Chamber for Daniel R. Danny LaRock, beloved husband, father, grandfather, and brother, retired Deputy Police Superintendent of Lowell. Danny was the beloved husband of Katie Collins LaRock of Lowell, who survives him. Danny attended St. Patrick's Grammar School and was a graduate of Central Catholic High School. Danny received his Bachelor of Science degree in law enforcement from Western New England College in 1998 and his Master's of Science degree in Criminal Justice Administration from Western New England College in 1999. Deputy LaRock began his career with the Lowell Police Department in 1994 after having served as a Tingsboro police officer for 5 years. Deputy LaRock received a number of commendations and citations throughout his career, and he was a highly respected mentor to numerous officers and supervisors. He was appointed as Deputy Superintendent of Police in 2019 and retired in 2021. Following his retirement, he became the Assistant Director of Public Safety and Captain for the Endicott College Deputy of Public Safety and Police. Danny earned a certificate in public safety leadership and management from Suffolk University in 2009 and completed the Alcoholism Substance Abuse Counseling Program at MCC in 2016. He completed several professional development trainings. Deputy LaRock was a former member of the Board of Directors of the Boys and Girls Club, the Lowell Middlesex Academy Charter School, and was the former president of the Friends of Lowell High School. He was also a longtime chief griller for the Lowell High School football and crew team. Besides his wife, Katie, Danny is survived by his 4 children, Danny P. LaRock, Lowell Police Officer Chrissy A. LaRock, Jackie R. LaRock, and James T. LaRock, his beloved grandson, Danny M. A. LaRock. He will be truly missed. And I'd like to offer a moment of silence in Darkened Chamber for all those who passed away since our last City Council meeting. Thank you.
Any other memorial? Hearing none, in addition to Councilor Murcia's memorial for Daniel LaRock, I also prepare a quick memorial statement for him and his family as well. They have been long time friends of the family. Some of this might be redundant, but I'd like to read them off right now. Former Deputy Superintendent Daniel R. LaRock recently passed away. He was the beloved husband of Katie Collins LaRock and 4 wonderful adult children. As a lifelong Lowellian, Danny was well educated and accomplished in law enforcement. He attended St. Patrick's, Lowell Catholic, Western New England College, Suffolk University, and the FBI executive programs, where he received his advanced degree and certificates. During his career, he also received numerous commendations and awards from the police department and local citizens groups. following the same proud tradition as his late father, John LaRock, also a former member of the Lowell Police Force. He began his career as a police officer in 1989 in Tyngsboro and then transferred to Lowell in 1991 and retired in 2021. He will be remembered as a strong and guiding person who was always supporting and assisting his fellow officers. He will be greatly missed by his family, friends, members of LPD, and the citizens of our city. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, please dim the light. I'd like to welcome everyone to the chamber. This is a very exciting meeting. I see adults, elderlies, and children in the chamber today. This is a great engagement by members of the public. Also, I'd like to welcome everyone at home who is watching tonight's meeting. We'll start with the meeting with the mayor's business. On item 2.1 is the communication remote Zoom participation. Need a motion by Councilor Drinkwater, second by Councilor Gishier. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. The ayes have it. Motion is carried. Before we recognize the Lowell baseball team, we do have a special visitor, Councilor Murcia.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If my colleagues will allow me, I'd like to suspend the rules to bring in and introduce, I believe he's the governor of Kenya. We're very honored to have his presence and his wife and his dignitaries here with us this evening, and you can introduce him.
Thank you, Councilor Murcia, second by Councilor Robinson. I would like, it's such an honor to have dignitaries visiting us, not only from different regions in the United States, but from all over the world. At this point, I'd like to introduce the Honorable, the Governor of Kenya. Please come to the podium. And also his number one supporter, strong and courageous Madam First Lady as well. If I could introduce the governor briefly, Joseph Ole Lenku is the second governor of Kajiado County, serving his second term after winning elections in both 2017 and 2022. Governor Ole Lenku was also appointed as the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination from 2013 to 2014, becoming the only Maasai person appointed and the pioneering chief executive of the newly created ministry under Kenya's new constitution. As governor, he has implemented reforms in the county government and has focused on improvements towards health, land, and education. Joining him today is his wife, First Lady Edna C. Lenku. We are proud to have both of you visiting us, and I found out that the governor and the First Lady was only vacationing in Massachusetts, but we have a large Kenyan community who are residents and part of the community here. It was my honor to invite you to come visit us here today. Mr. Governor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chao. And I once more want to introduce my wife, Edna, the First Lady, Kajiado County, where I serve as the governor in Kenya. Kenya has a devolved system of government where we have 47 counties under the Republic of Kenya. Let me take this opportunity to say it is an honor and privilege to visit Lowell, the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution. The historic city, a sister city to Nairobi, our national capital, since October 2009, has also become home to many people from my own country, Kenya, the cradle of mankind. Kenyans live, work, study, and flourish in Lowell, a testament that many stakeholders in this community, from local government, businesses, as well as citizens, are keen on building long-term global people-to-people relationships through the development of international leadership, friendship, and understanding. It is these connections that allow the first Kenyan Chief of Staff to the Mayor, the young, energetic Mr. Erastus Mwangi, to work with the first Cambodian Mayor-in-law, the sister of the capital city of Kenya. I am the governor of Kajiado County in southern Kenya. It is the original home of the Maasai people, but now boasts of a cosmopolitan population. It is also the home of the famous Amboseli National Park, nestled around the foot of majestic Mount Kilimanjaro, with the largest population of elephants in the world. I look forward to welcoming you there as our visitors. I also look forward to continuing strengthening our connection, valuable partnership, and citizen participation with cultural, educational, and commercial entities. Thank you very much for having us, and God bless you. Good evening.
Mr. Governor and First Lady, I had given you personal gift earlier. This gift is from the City Manager's Office, the City Council, and myself. We would like to present this gift from the city formally to both of you. Please.
Everybody, good evening.
Next on the agenda is 2.2, the recognition of the Lowell 9 Under baseball team. This team doesn't really need any introduction. They are more famous and win more than the Red Sox, actually. So I'd like to welcome the 9 Under baseball team to the chamber. And I would like to thank Councillor John Drinkwater for organizing the welcoming of the team to City Hall. I do have a citation I would like to read first. Then I can open up to the floor and then to the coaches and the team. Official citation, be it hereby known to all that the City of Lowell in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts hereby offers its sincerest congratulations to the Lowell 9U baseball team. The Lowell 9U baseball team had a great season. They won the Cal Ripken Basketball District Championship and the Eastern Massachusetts State Championship. As well, they would make it all the way to the semifinals of the New England Regional Championship Tournament. The resilience and determination of the Lowell 9U baseball team was on full display during the state championship when they would make thrilling late-game comebacks, scoring the winning run in 2 of their 3 elimination games in the very last inning, including the championship game. Congratulations to the players and coaches for their successful season, representing Lowell with pride. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Sakai Chow, along with all the councilors, are happy to sign the citation and present to the team, the coaches, and the mom and dads and the siblings for making Lowell proud. We have a baseball enthusiast on the City Council members, and we'll start with Councilor John Drinkwater.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as you just alluded to, I've had the privilege of being able to watch this team play, not only during the summer, but going back to last summer when they first started to play as a group as 8-year-olds. They practiced throughout this past winter. They started playing games together through the Boomer baseball program in early April when the temperature wasn't even hitting 50 degrees. I think it was probably closer to 30. And when they first started playing games and the parents were all out there with winter hats and gloves, much different than it is now. But, you know, this group is very hardworking. Like I said, started playing early. Not only are they great baseball players, not only are they very skilled and hardworking, but they go out there and they just have so much fun playing the game of baseball, and it's just a joy to watch them play. And that's the most important thing is they go out there and it's a game and it's fun, and they racked up quite a few wins along the way that have been very fun to watch. So congratulations to the team on the achievement of winning the Cal Ripken Baseball State Championship. I know they gave a lot of us a few extra gray hairs in the way they've gone out and won some of these games, but they really did show so much poise and resilience in being able to hang in these games and fight till the very last inning. It was so fun to watch. Also just want to recognize the incredible group of coaches that we have here, Coach Sweat, Coach Zaharias, Coach Lasher, Manager Bill Florence, Coach Kane. And not only are they turning this group into incredible baseball players, they're great mentors, and they always make sure, even through these high-pressure situations, that they're keeping the game fun and they're keeping the kids loose and having a good time, which is so important. We also had the honor of hosting the Cal Ripken State Championship, which this team went on to win. And I just want to acknowledge all the work that went into making sure that there was a great face on the city of Lowell for all the visitors that came in during that time. Not only was the coaching staff coaching games and helping run a smooth tournament, but in between games they're on the field raking, chalking the field, making sure that it's ready for other teams to go out and play. And it really was a 24/7 job between the coaching staff and the families that all really stepped up to help. And I want everyone to know that not only was the city extremely well represented by the players on the field, but they were well represented by the tournament that was put on by the city of Lowell. So once again, just want to acknowledge this group for you're really just putting on such an amazing show for the families, for the coaches, and for the entire city of Lowell throughout the summer. And congratulations on winning that state championship.
Councilor Kishia.
Thank you, Mayor Chow. I also had the pleasure of watching them play multiple times, and Councilor Drinkwater asked them, "Are you sure they're not 13 years old?" But there's one thing that I think they all should do for everybody in the audience. Before every game, they have this one thing they cheer to the other teams that stands out. So we'll let them do it for you. So go ahead, Mr. Florence. You guys can go. You got to do it loud.
I'm fired up, you fired up? Yeah! I'm fired up, of you, fighters! Yeah! I'm fired up, you fighters! Yeah! I can't hear you! Yeah!
Any other counselors? Before we have the coach make a few statements, I believe we have a video, a 2-minute video that was submitted by one of the parents. I don't know if Mr. Gary or LTC, is that video ready to be played?
I think it was here, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a video? Is it up there?
There it is. Hold on.
Okay, there you go.
So I'll say, if I could, real quick, Mr. Manager, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having these guys here tonight. Like you said, Mr. Mayor and Council Drinkwater, these kids are awesome. They've worked hard since practicing indoors in January. We were outside when it was 30 degrees, and I've spent more time with some of these families than I have my own the past couple months, which has been awesome. They're truly a team, top to bottom. Every kid here contributed at one point or another. I couldn't be more proud of them. They never gave up. Multiple from behind wins. So thank you for having them here tonight. It's really special to them, and we appreciate it. So thank you. All right. And I think I'm just pressing play now.
Any of the coaches or player want to say anything? If not, let's take a picture together. I'd like to welcome the players, the coaches, and mom, dad, or any member of the families. Please come inside the chamber. We'll take a photo with our counselors.
Yeah, go ahead, follow coach. Here's the last one. Go ahead. Good champ.
Take them too.
That was great. Thank you, the baseball team and family, for being here. If you would like to leave now, or you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. We'll just take 30 seconds delay here until everybody who would like to leave, they could leave. It is 7 o'clock, so it is time for the... We'll do the minutes, okay. All right, we'll do a quick 2.3, the minutes real quick. Item 3.1 is the City Clerk Minutes of City Council meeting, July 11th, for acceptance by Councilor Rook, second by Councilor Scott. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Motion is carried. At 7 o'clock, we are at the general public hearings. We have two public hearings today, 4.1, 4.2. 4.1 is on the ordinance. 4.2 is on order abandoned portion of Pratt Avenue, which I understand there'll be more speakers on 4.1 than 4.2. So I'd like a motion to take 4.2 out of order first by Councilor Yam, second by Councilor Mercier. 4.2 is public hearing, order abandoned portion of Pratt Avenue. This portion is open to all those who are in favor.
Good evening, Manager Golden, Mayor Chow, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Attorney John Cox, 375 Gorham Street, Lowell, Massachusetts. I represent Mr. Alex Papadopoulos, who is here this evening, the owner of 205 and 206 Pratt Avenue in Lowell. Just a little history on Pratt Avenue. It is a paper street which runs off of Westford Street and runs dissects Mr. Papadopoulos' property. It does not, at the end of his property, it is a dead end. The city back in the 1980s abandoned that other portion of Pratt Avenue that continued further down. So currently, the end of Pratt Avenue ends at Mr. Papadopoulos' property, and that's a dead end. It doesn't go any further. There is a condominium on the beginning kind of Pratt Avenue, Westview Condominiums. It has an access off of Pratt Avenue. And what we are requesting tonight is that the council abandon approximately 270 feet of Pratt Avenue from basically the Westview Condominium entrance to the dead end. So it would not affect any access to or from the condominium property, and would make things a lot easier, if you would, for Mr. Papadopoulos. Now, this request is in furtherance of potential future development, where Mr. Papadopoulos will be proposing to the Zoning Board of Appeals, as well as the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, a building of an apartment building behind 205, which would be 40 units of housing, much needed housing in the city. Clearly, that area is zoned properly. There would be several kind of minor variances from the ZBA. We would need to go to the Planning Board for site plan approval and a special permit, and we would need to go to the Conservation Commission. So this is just the very, very beginning of this process. But I think it's an exciting one. Many times we hear in the city that there is a shortage of housing, of good new housing in the city. This is an opportunity to add 40 units of housing in an area that is zoned properly for apartments. There'd be many advantages to the city. The 40 new units of housing, as I referred to. It would also be a 4-story building with underneath parking. It would distribute approximately $90,000 a year in additional taxes to the city. We would create more green space on Westford Street. There's a White House on Westford Street that would be totally demolished and more green space added. And there'd be more trees and what have you put throughout the parking area. again, it's the first step in a long process, and one that we hope we can take begin tonight. We see it as a very exciting opportunity for the city. Again, Mr. Papadopoulos moved here from Greece in 1982, worked at Raytheon his entire life as an engineer. He's a good guy, too, I can tell you that. So we hope the council will look favorably on this. I understand the process is for it to be referred to the city clerk, to be held there for a week or 2 weeks, whatever your next council meeting is, and go from there. So clearly happy to answer any questions. If neighbors have questions, we're happy to answer them. We hope, again, that we can start this process tonight on a positive note. Thank you very much.
Anyone else here in favor, to speak in favor? In favor? Yes. Not yet, so anyone else here to speak in favor? No one else, the portion is closed. Now this portion is open to all those who oppose. Open to all those who oppose.
My name is David McCabe. I live in that Westview condo. We oppose the construction of the new apartments on Pratt Avenue. Pratt Avenue is a narrow little street where the traffic is already bad, and 40 new apartments would make traffic much worse there and would be a burden for everyone. I recommend that we realign Pratt Avenue so it faces Stebbins Street directly and then put a traffic light there. That would make things better for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition? Open to all those who oppose. Hearing none, that portion is closed. We're not going to vote on this today. It needs to be referred back to the clerk's office. Need a motion to refer to the clerk's office for 7 days and to be brought back for a vote on August 8th by Councillor Mercier, second by Councillor Nguyen. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. The ayes have it. Motion is carried. We are now will take, before I continue with the agenda, I know that everyone here in the chamber is here to speak on.
Thank you very much.
Something. Thank you, Mr. Cox. To speak on different items, it being the public hearing section, we're going to take one more item on the public hearing, and then we'll approach the agenda where there are people present to speak on them. 4.1 is the ordinance, amend zoning accessory dwelling units. This is a continuation from July 11, 23. This portion is now open to all those who are in favor. Anyone here to speak in favor? Please come to the podium, state your name, and make your statement. Thank you.
There is a person on Zoom, too.
There's a person on Zoom also?
Go ahead.
Yes, please.
A reminder.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and our council in our chamber right now, and everyone else here. My name is Susie Chun, a resident of Lowell, Massachusetts, 174 Hale Street. Today, we are faced with a decision that holds immense importance for the future of our city, the city of Lowell. The question on the table is whether we should allow accessory dwelling units or ADUs in single-family zoned communities. It's essential that we take a closer look at the potential benefits of embracing ADUs and understand how they can positively impact our community. Addressing the pressing housing costs and needs in Lowell requires immediate action, and ADUs offer a viable solution to this crisis. As people struggle to find affordable housing, many have forced to leave our city in search of better options elsewhere. By supporting this motion, we can retain more residents and attract new ones, contributing to the growth and prosperity of our community. Furthermore, ADUs offer homeowners an avenue to generate additional income through rentals and their ability to foster multi-generational living arrangements, fostering multi-generational of a community in support among neighbors. In a time when economic pressures are mounting, this financial support can be a lifeline for families facing challenges and difficulties. It also empowers homeowners to maintain their properties better and invest in their local economy. When we think about Lowell's future, we must consider the kind of city we want to create for generations to come. We envision a city that is inclusive, resilient, and supportive of all its residents. This decision to support ADUs is not just about addressing the immediate housing crisis. It's about paving the way for a brighter future that offers opportunities for everyone to strive. I ask for you to support this motion or this our ordinance. Thank you very much.
Anyone here to speak in favor? Please also, if you could, write your name on a piece of paper there as well, so that way the clerk can record your name after.
It's blank. No one's written on it yet. Yeah, but I'm not the first speaker is my point. Hello, I'm Ron Peastree. I'm from 240 Beacon Street here in Lowell. This is my second time speaking to this august body about this particular issue. My concerns today are the same as my concerns the first time I stood up and spoke about this. ADUs are an important thing, and I am absolutely in favor of them, but the number of realistic places that we're going to be able to add to the total pool of real estate is probably marginal. It should be part of an overall strategy, not something that's being thought of stovepipe separately from everything else. The housing issue requires a systemic approach, and I'm concerned by us breaking it up into little pieces like that I'm not seeing evidence that we're paying attention to the guidance that we have available to us from the state and from the federal government on ADUs themselves and on the overall housing problem in general. I'd also like to note that the ADU situation, if we made it legal, would recognize a de facto situation that already exists. There's plenty of people who have family members who are living in their single-family houses right now and are de facto taking care of somebody else. Their taxation system and other kinds of problems that they have because they have to sort of do it under the table would go away if we actually made this explicit and recognized the reality of the situation. Thank you very much.
We are now still open to all those who are in favor.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Wamboi. I live at 33 Moore Street, apartment 10 in Lowell, Massachusetts. We have heard from the two speakers what the advantages or the pluses are for having ADUs. So the reason we first need to think about why did this discussion ever even come up? It came up because Lowell would like to provide affordable housing options across the city. Lowell would like to allow for multi-generational living opportunities and improve housing affordability. I'd like to caution Lowell from deciding against ADUs because of perceived justifications of exclusionary zoning, such as declining property values, which is essentially trying to make sure that low-income families are kept away from certain neighborhoods in the town. In fact, research does show that ADUs do not lead to a decline in property values. It, in fact, increases it. I would also like to caution Lowell from deciding against ADUs because of social control reasons that may be hiding behind perceived changes in neighborhood character. It's a very good thing that we actually started by praying. That was what happened here. And the prayer was for wisdom. So I'd like to add to that prayer list. We need to check our hearts as Lowell residents and be certain that the opposition to ADUs is not because we want to keep certain people out. We need to really, really check our hearts. I'd like to propose something. I'd like the city of Lowell to think through some of the legitimate reasons that were raised by many at the planning boards and come back with an ADU proposal that satisfies and balances genuine concerns for and against the proposal. Thank you.
This portion is now still open to all those who are in favor.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Josh McCabe, and I live at 62 Fairmount Street up in Belvedere. And I've come out here to support this ordinance. This is the third time I've come to speak on this. And the reason is very simple, that we're in a housing crisis and every little bit counts. This is not a perfect ordinance. I wish it would help address the crisis even more than it can, but it is a step in the right direction. And I would rather see us take a step in the right direction than not take any step at all, and that would be a step in the wrong direction. So I would urge this council to vote in favor of this ordinance and then come back and vote in favor of more zoning changes that will help address this housing crisis. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Carl Howell. I'm the Chief Program Officer at Community Teamwork, as well as the Chair for the Lowell Housing Choice Coalition. I would like to express my gratitude for the Council and the City Manager for this opportunity to address the Council and to discuss this significant policy change. As we are all well aware, housing instability has become increasingly challenging across the city and the state and requires our collective effort to mitigate it. Our community has witnessed distressing instances of seniors and individuals on fixed incomes being pushed into homelessness, leading to a large surge in housing instability. Additionally, rising housing costs have compelled our young professionals and college graduates to seek housing outside Lowell. The city faced a concerning rise in the number of homeless students and households in this past year. While there are several land use policies that we can be considering to tackle the housing challenges, Community Teamwork and the Housing Choice Coalition firmly believe that accessory dwellings are among the essential land use ordinances that the Council should adopt. The proposed ADU ordinance drafted by the Department of Planning and Development offers numerous benefits, including some of the following, but not limited to: creating affordable housing options. ADUs present smaller and more affordable housing units, diversifying the options of our renters. Generating additional rental income, as you've heard other speakers talk about, how they can rent the ADUs. This is really essential benefit for those who are trying to offset the cost of the cost of living, as well as supplementing their fixed income. Enhancing multi-generational living. This aspect aligns well with Lowell's celebration of cultural diversity, where many cultures value and embrace multi-generational living. Supporting sustainable living and density, where ADUs promote sustainable housing options through making the use of existing infrastructure and reduce the need for land development. ADUs also support those who wish to age in place, offering viable housing options for aging homeowners who wish to downsize or remain close to their family and support systems, as well as close to their support systems as they age. And lastly, strengthening community cohesion. ADUs foster a sense of community while enabling extended family and friends to live in close proximity, enhancing social interactions and their support networks. We hope that the Council recognizes the pressing need to revise our city's land use policies. An ADU policy represents a step in the right direction and will organically and gradually increase housing options throughout the city while supporting our homeowners in the process. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Warren, and I'm the Division Director of Housing and Homeless Services at Community Teamwork. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the proposed ordinance to amend zoning to allow for accessory dwelling units. I'm here to speak to the need of housing of all types to address the current housing crisis, and I'm speaking in support of this ordinance as one solution to a larger problem that needs our attention. Our programming supports individuals, youth, and families experiencing homelessness. We have 133 families, 48 individuals, and 12 youth who are currently in our shelters or transitional housing. And we work every day to help these folks to move out of shelter into their own unit. However, finding an affordable apartment has become a near impossible task for those who are very low income. Even those that have been lucky enough to receive a Section 8 or MRVP housing voucher are having a very difficult time finding a unit. This is their home community and where they want to live, but there is just not enough apartments available. Allowing for more flexibility with ADUs has the potential to free up units by allowing family members to use their existing properties to build a unit for their parents, grandparents, or children to live in. Simply put, the more units that are built to accommodate someone who wants to live in Lowell with a relative, the more units will be available to others who may want to remain in Lowell. ADUs are one tool that could be added to help those of us working in the field to house individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness. Thank you for your time, and please consider supporting the ordinance for our low-income neighbors here in Lowell.
Anyone else here to speak in favor?
Hi, Brian Mead, 80 Elliott Drive. So I'm going to come at this a little bit different angle. I mean, I think it's great to have different options for homeless people and what have you, but I think that ADUs is going to help more people in the middle income sort of range for housing because this is going to be owner occupied, stipulated that they have to rent it to someone and they have to live on the property. So, I mean, people are going to rent this to their friends, their relatives, their grandparents, their cousins. And there's a lot of need in the neighborhood that I live in that I know people say, hey, I'd love to sell my home. I'm stuck in this big 4 or 5 bedroom home, but where am I going to go? Right? So they sell the house, they make a killing, they're going to move to New Hampshire, they're going to move far away. So a lot of people, they stay in their home for decades on end, and then they let the home kind of fall apart, and then it finally goes on the market, and it's not working. So I think if you allow ADUs in the single family neighborhoods, a lot of people, a lot of old timers would downsize and move into an ADU with their grandkids, in the neighborhood, wherever across the city. It's going to open up housing for new families, younger people, police, firemen, teachers to live in the city and start new families. So that's where I'm coming from. It's obviously going to increase revenue for the city. It's tax positive, and I think that like I said, it's going to strengthen the neighborhood. And I hope that you guys vote yes. Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak in favor? To speak in favor? This is to speak in favor of ADU. Hearing none, this portion is now closed. We're now open to all those who oppose.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and members of the City Council, Mr. Manager. My name is Robert Hunt. I live at 48 Florence Avenue in Lowell. I'm here tonight not to speak against ADUs, and that's what I didn't think what we were doing. This is not, I didn't believe this was a for or against ADUs. We just need to make sure that there are guardrails. And up until this point, I have not seen any. I think that ADUs are a good thing, and I believe currently ADUs are legal in this city. Because at the planning board, we had a couple people that talked about it. So this is not that ADUs are not currently legal in the city. It's just that this proposal takes all the guardrails off and allows it to be open. And I think most of the people that are here tonight that are going to speak against it are actually for it, but would like to see some guardrails put back into it instead of opening it wide up. So again, I'm a little disappointed that this proposal has even gotten this far as written. And for me, this is my third time speaking at this. I spoke at Councilor Rita Mercier's subcommittee meeting, at the planning board, and now tonight. So there are many questions, concerns, and requests for changes that I would like to present tonight. First, the current proposed ADU ordinance table of accessory uses has all 18 zoning districts selected as yes, meaning it's allowed. And that is a little bit sloppy. You are actually considering allowing an ADU in an industrial district? Because it says, according to the table, you can put it in any district you want in the city. And we brought this up at the planning board and we got no answer for it. I can't even find a single-family home in an industrial zone to put it in there, but yet we're going to allow it, the way the table reads. All right, so number two, the number of bedrooms per unit during the rollout should be limited to only one to start. And this is a no-brainer as far as if you live in the city, this is a no-brainer. The reason is requiring one off-street, you're only requiring one off-street parking spot. So figure 2 people are going to live there in a 1-bedroom, at least 2 cars. So you have one off-street, you kick one to the curb. If you decide to make it 2 bedrooms, which I've heard, or it's really not in the latest proposal, not stated, you're going to have 1 parking spot and you're going to kick 3 cars out to the street. Now, I don't know where you live, but where I live in a traditional single family, or my next street over, which is a traditional 2-family, it's very dense. The densification is huge. And already you've seen the placards that are out all up and down the streets of the city. If you look in the Highlands, if you start at Stevens and go up all the streets, across the street from Councilor Nunes, you'll see all the placards that allow, a spot. It's just densification is going to become unbelievable in certain parts of the city if you open it up. And I think you should open it up. I think it should be loosened, but I think that this should be crafted a little bit better than what has been done so far. Number 3, section 4.3.83C. At least one owner of the property must reside in either unit. And I can tell you, I spoke to the building commissioner out in Westford, and during their rollout, which they've had for a while, they found this very troublesome. And they added full-time, just to clarify what the residency means, because it's very open-ended the way it is right now. You have snowbirds, you have people that live there for 2 months, they own it, basically they get the permit, they move out, nobody really knows how we're going to check. So I would consider putting that in there. Number 4, 4.3.8, number 5. This is really the killer. Special permit required. So in the event that the proposal could not meet either one or any of the conditions set forth in section 4.3.A, a special permit is required from the Zoning Board of Appeals. This is totally wrong. It eliminates all the safeguards as needed, and the ZBA is not considered a guardrail in this city. So this ordinance as written allows by right construction of a rental apartment in every single family home in the city of Lowell. And also a detached garage, basement, or attic. Think about that for a minute, if this was ever to come to fruition. This is what I talk about where we need guardrails in case this goes sideways. And number 5, for me specifically, because I see it in historic districts, I would like to see added to the proposal that this should include current historic districts in the city of Lowell. If this passes, these districts will be hard hit, and the character will be lost forever. Think of the row houses over here that were torn down to make the Cement City housing development. That almost cost the city of Lowell the Lowell National Historic Park. If we do this now, would we have ever gotten that again? Probably not. Last but not least is the implementation and administration of the new ordinance. We currently have a backlog of over 20,000 rental apartment inspections behind. And this was not a byproduct. This was not a byproduct, a result of COVID-19. This has been like this for years. This was detailed in a report by former Director of Development Services, Eric Slagle, who at the time thought that in early 21 that they were so far behind that maybe we should just allow amnesty for everybody and just let everybody have whatever they want. All the illegal apartments, everything. Just let everybody do whatever they want. And that's kind of what I see right now. So what I would like the council to do is kick this back to the planning board to get more input and maybe to the neighborhoods. Because I never went to a neighborhood meeting where there was this. I've been to 3 of the other meetings, but not to the neighborhood meetings, because I haven't found one. So please start on the conservative side and look at it again after maybe a new council is installed or after revisions to this implementation have been made and neighborhood input is given. If this goes as written, we will never be able to put the genie back in the bottle. And if it goes sideways, God help us all. By taking a conservative approach, you can always make adjustments later. And remember, it is legal now to have ADUs in the city of Lowell. It's not like we don't allow it. We do. Is it a tedious process? Yes. Could it be loosened? Yes. Let's start there. Let's not open it wide up. Thank you.
We have a gentleman on Zoom, a lady on Zoom. Deb Forgione.
Sorry. Before I have you speak, I have someone been waiting on Zoom for a while. I'm going to allow the person on Zoom to go now.
Deb Forgione. You have to unmute. Deb Forgione. She's got her on mute. I don't know. I guess we go back to it.
Person on Zoom is not able to communicate right now with audio issues. Please, if you could go now.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Brian Barry. I live at 85 Clark Road in the city of Lowell. I've lived here, was born and raised here. I've lived here for 71 years. I have 5 children. 4 have purchased single-family homes in Lowell. I've owned rental units in Lowell for over 44 years. And I'm opposed to this ordinance as presented for a number of reasons. First of all, basically, you're rezoning every single-family district into 2-family zoning. There is no more single-family zone. The reason's that bad. Number 1, density. Lowell is dense enough. I don't think we need any more density. Neither me, nor my children, nor any of the other residents of Lowell who bought a single-family house in a single-family zone or in any other zone bargained for or ever thought the city would zone their neighborhood for conversions to 2-family houses. The present zoning provides for an in-law apartment where all parties residing in the house are related. This ordinance allows a rental apartment to non-related parties. This is not an in-law apartment. I don't know who's watching out there tonight, but I know most people don't even know this is going on. My kids don't know what's going on. My wife called tonight to tell them I might speak, and what are you talking about? Well, these are not in-law apartments. You can rent to whomever you want. The ordinance provides the size of the apartment to be half the square footage of your existing dwelling. Does that include the basement? The ordinance is silent on that. Or 900 feet, whichever is less. So no more than 900 feet, unless a petition is allowed for a special permit by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So you could go over 900 feet. Parking, the requirement now is for 1 car. Now, a 900 square foot apartment can be a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. There's enough square footage there. That could be 4 to 6 occupants. Certainly there'll be more than 1 car for that many people. Where do the cars go? They'll go out on the street. Or again, Even the one parking space requirement can be altered by special permit to the ZBA. In Section 1C of the ordinance, one of the purposes of the proposed ordinance is to encourage the efficient use of the city's housing supply while preserving the character of the city's neighborhoods. I can assure you that this ordinance as presented will destroy the character of the city's neighborhoods. I respectfully ask that you vote not to adopt this ordinance and to protect our neighborhoods. As I was sitting upstairs watching the other festivities, I thought of a scenario that I'd like you to consider. Say we have a young couple, 1 or 2 children, or maybe no children yet. They live in an apartment in Charlestown, in the city of Boston. They're paying a lot of rent. And then someone tells them there's a lot to like about Lowell. Sure, we have Winter Festival, Folk Festival, Repertory Theater, Auditorium, new high school being built, universities here, Middlesex is here. There's highway access both north and south, easy to get into Boston, there's public transportation. And the housing's more affordable than surrounding towns and certainly more affordable than the Boston area. They come, they look around. They find a single-family house in a neighborhood that they like. They're about to make an offer. Then they hear that all the single families on their street can, by right, be converted to 2-family houses with a new apartment of up to 900 square feet or possibly more, with tenants picked by owners. Density probably will change in their neighborhood. There are parking issues, more cars on the streets. The character of the neighborhood may drastically change. They don't know what that neighborhood will be like 10 years later. So what do they decide? They decide we're not going to spend $500,000 in Lowell, we're going to go look somewhere else. Thank you very much. And I can tell you that was my daughter. She moved from Charlestown here last year and spent more than that to purchase her house in her neighborhood. And if this ordinance were in place, I would have advised her against it, frankly, even having lived here my whole life. Thank you.
We now go to a speaker on Zoom.
Deb Forgione.
Okay, sorry. I really had wanted to go after Jerry Fischette, the planning board, but I will speak. I do want to say, because I've been to most of the meetings, and I can definitely say this, that the city needs to make the following changes to the ordinance draft to make sure it's not a backdoor to change single-family zoning to 2-family. So the recommended changes by the planning board, which is to require a special permit to the planning board, is essential. This draft never defines maximum bedrooms. It never defines maximum parking spaces. Those are essential. Also, with these ADUs, we're finally talking about they're not cute granny like suites. They're apartments. Therefore, it must have schedules, as all rentals do in the city. And it is for the safety of the owners and the renters. And also, you must add a new position under inspectional services to implement oversight and enforcement. This is such short money for how much can go wrong by this municipal law. We keep saying it's an ordinance, but it's a municipal law and it has to be enforced. And I just wanted to steal something from the DPD director. Today there was in your packet a motion response, and in it is a memorandum. And it's such a wise memorandum for an issue having to do with affordable housing trust fund. And I want to apply it to this zoning ordinance. So the DPD recommends waiting until the Lowell Forward Master Plan and Housing Production Plan are complete before moving ahead. These two complementary planning processes are underway and have incorporated robust public engagement, which thus far has included surveys, steering committee meetings, a public workshop, and over 30 focus group conversations with community organizations and neighborhood groups. This process wasn't even close. In fact, up until now, a lot of people don't even understand what you were doing, and now they're just starting to find out. Also, DPD believes, again, having to do with the affordable housing, believes that waiting until these critical planning efforts are complete will better understand the needs and priorities of the community. Both the master plan and the housing production plan will provide several concrete action items for the city to pursue, including what the city can do to support the creation of more affordable housing. And just to put the caveat to it, it was brought to our attention that this whole process, this great process is inclusionary with surveys, real research, there is a consulting company that's being paid $500,000 to help create this. And we're not even in the mix. The ADUs were never in any of the conversations at any of the meetings that I had gone to. It was left out. So I just strongly recommend that it goes back to the master plan where it belongs, where it gets vetted. There are surveys, there are steering committees, and there is extensive community engagement, which this ordinance never had. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. And we have many more speakers. If all the speakers, please keep under 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the ladies and gentlemen of the council. I'm going to keep it short because I had notes, but a lot of people have already covered what I have was going to cover. Part of the problem is I've seen people up here speaking on this topic, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out listening who are mixing up in-law apartments with ADUs. It's a different situation. It may appear the same, but it is currently a different situation than for an ADU. The biggest problems I see is, as someone has already said, not enough guardrails. I mean, there's no indication. Also, it says parking for one car. What does that mean? Parking on my lawn? Or parking on the owner's lawn? Or is it a recognized legitimate driveway in some way, shape, or form? It is so loose right now, as someone pointed out. How many people? How many bedrooms? That what you're going to have is, it's so vague that people are going to be coming before the council, before various groups trying to get variances or trying to get permits because it's too wide open, it's too vague, and it's become an issue. I'm not against an ADU, but I would like to see the rules to be a little tighter, because we can always loosen them up in the future, but boy, trying to tighten them up is a really tough situation. And I apologize for not introducing myself in the first place. My name is Donald Denome. I live on D Street in Lowell. I am also co-chairman of the Highlands Neighborhood Association, along with Nancy Judge. And yes, I've signed the paper. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. And again, thank you for allowing us to speak tonight on both sides of the issue. I made some notes before coming here today, and a lot of them represent what I heard at the planning board meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. William Nichols, I wrote it down, but I didn't state it. William Nichols, I live at 48 Rendell Park Drive in Lowell. I made a lot of notes before coming tonight. Took a lot of notes at the planning board meeting last week, and I know there was a lot of good input that was given out at that meeting. I have a closing statement that I decided to use as my opening statement because I think it applies a little better. I'm recommending that the City Council tonight vote no on the ADU ordinance purely because I don't think it's ready. I think it needs some further review. Like a few people have already stated, and I think even some on the for side of the ADU, I think there's just a lot of elements that need further work and further review. Ask your neighborhood groups and subcommittees to come back on this, get together. I'm willing to volunteer to be on such a committee if needed. I think we need a reasonable time frame to be looked at to come back on this and come back with a new draft that will clarify a lot of issues that I think have been brought forward by the planning board and by some of the speakers tonight. Some of them that I have personally and that I've heard further speakers talk about is this idea in Section 2AI, the proof of ownership of the property or authorization from the owner. What does this mean? Does this mean somebody can just come with a piece of paper and said the owner is okay with this? I think there's some clarification needed there. Section 3C, at least one owner of the property must reside in either the primary dwelling or the ADU. What's the definition of the owner mean? Does that mean the owner that owns the property as recorded at the Register of Deeds? What if the property is owned by a trust? A lot of properties in the city are owned by a trust. Who is the owner that is going to reside in the single-family ADU? What about owners of multiple properties? It seems to imply that an owner of multiple properties that might want to have ADUs will be limited to only one because they have to live there. And I also think I heard Bob Hunt talk about the idea that they must be there permanently. It can't just be an owner that comes and goes. I think this is very important. One of the items that came up at the planning board meeting was the idea of defining in the audience what is a short-term rental. A short-term rental of 31 days or not by the state requires that the individuals collect excise taxes. Are we going to do that if they're short-term rentals, or are we going to define this as being a certain period of time? Off-street parking, that's a real issue for me. We've already heard about that tonight. Must have at least one additional off-street parking spot for an ADU. I'm taking that as implying that it must be a driveway. If it must be a driveway and there are some small lot sizes in the city, it means to me you have to approve a driveway to be put in. I think there's a lot of potential issues with this, and I think that needs to be defined a little better. Are there any minimum driveway sizes right now in the city? I don't know. Where can a driveway be placed? Anywhere on the property? What about the surface of the driveway? I know there are some requirements for that the city already has in place. The Section 5, we've already heard about this, the special permit section. This really bothers me. Can the requirements go to the zoning board? I mean, or the planning board? It's going to go to the zoning board now by the way the ordinance is written. I'm not sure that's the right thing, and I'm not sure they can handle the workload adequately. It also states that an approved ADU property will be identified on the Register of Deeds rolls, and should it also be on the assessor's property listing? Is this going to trigger an assessor's increase in value, therefore higher taxation? In theory, it should. And I agree with the speaker that spoke for it that it's probably going to raise property values. It would be a good thing in a lot of respects, but I think that's a situation we should look at. Will a sale of a property, as identified in the ordinance, with an approved ADU already, if it exists, face any issues at real estate closing if a new owner wishes to continue the ADU? And if a new owner doesn't wish to continue an ADU and go back to, I guess, what I'll call a non-ADU status, are there going to be time limits in this in order to get that done, to bring the unit back into compliance with how it was before it was an ADU? Can the city of Lowell handle increased workload of inspections? That's something I think you need to ask yourselves. I also don't think all districts should be approved for ADUs. Some example are historic districts should be looked at. Present college locations, Pawtucketville area is very high already with college students. This could really be a greater impact. There are a lot of heavily congested streets already. We're just going to add to it if we don't plan this out very carefully. Should there be lot size minimums? A lot of lots couldn't handle a driveway. I think we should look at that in a further ordinance. Should there be any different considerations given to what I'm going to call rental ADUs versus non-rental ADUs? I look at a non-rental as being an in-law, possibly a son or a daughter living, versus having it rented out to the public. And one of the issues I found online that some cities and towns are having problems with already is if a dwelling with an approved ADU is foreclosed on, does the mortgage holder, usually a bank, now have a right to rent the primary and ADU for rental until they can resell the property? A lot of times, you know, foreclosures are out there for a long period of time. This could be an issue. Should we have a limit on the number of occupants and bedrooms in an ADU? Another modification. And personally, and this is my last one, and I hope I'm within my 5 minutes, should we be limiting garages under this ordinance? From the point of view that if we take away an existing garage and convert it into an ADU, I think we've already heard this message, we could be taking away one or two bays from a garage and putting those cars on the street, yet we've created an ADU. I'm okay maybe with a garage with an overhead area on top of the existing bays, but I think we should really consider garages being modified. In closing, I'm just asking the City Council tonight to vote no, not because you're against it or even yes for ADUs. It just needs further work. I just don't think it's ready yet. Thank you very much.
Could I see a show of hand who else is planning to speak tonight? One more person? One, okay. We do have a few more. If I could ask everyone to respectfully keep it under 5 minutes so we can give everyone an opportunity to speak.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Mr. Manager, my name is Jerry Frechette. I live at 80 Dunbar Ave, and I'm also the Vice Chair of the Planning Board. And the Planning Board did vote on July 17th to permit me to speak officially on behalf of the Planning Board. So, Mr. Mayor, I would hope you would afford me just a little bit of leeway here in covering what was discussed at the Planning Board. I do have handouts, if I may, to the City Council. That is the list of dimensional requirements. Mr. Mayor, I have that for you as well. And also, I'm going to pass down, because once again, I saw some head shaking and there was some confusion as what was represented, but we do allow second kitchens in homes, and the building department will help you be able to build it so it's like an in-law suite. And I have addresses where that's done legally, and I know one of the councils was shaking their head when he said ADUs are allowable. It becomes semantics, but again, I think we've established that with all the meetings. What was before the Planning Board on July 17th was the ordinance itself, the draft ordinance. So the Planning Board was really charged with delving into the conditions of the ordinance, the requirements of the ordinance, and the applicability to the City of Lowell as proposed. There were 13 speakers that evening that spoke against the ordinance that was presented. There was one speaker that spoke in favor, but spoke in favor in the context of having built on Fowler Road a in-law suite already legally for their son, but went through a lot to do that based on the current requirements, and talked about how they had an ailing mother-in-law. So what they did was gave an argument for in-law apartments. There were also 15 people who did not speak, but when the chairman asked show of hands who was opposed, there were 15 people that raised their hands. I must say, of the 13 people that spoke against, they were all residents of the city of Lowell. And the one person that spoke for it was a resident of the city of Lowell. Present that evening was Councilor Gitcher and Councilor Scott as well. The planning board was given a presentation by Francesca Sigliano, who is the chief planner for the city of Lowell, PowerPoint presentation. I think this council has seen it before. And in that also listed our neighbors, Tingsboro, Dracut, Tewksbury, Billerica, Chelmsford, Westford, and Dunstable, that said that they, and Pepperell, that had ADUs. But what was not listed, and we did not have a comprehensive report, is when you say they have an ADU, what are they? So, yeah, you know, the members of the planning board had to do a little bit of their own research because we didn't have a comprehensive report. But the towns of Tingsboro and Dracut and Tewksbury, they were for family members, Chelmsford family members. Dunstable was oddly enough for rentals, but they only have 2 approved, and you have to have a lot size of 87,000 square feet. Also, most of those communities did not allow for detached units. In their lot sizes, the smallest lot sizes were 20,000 square feet all the way up to an acre plus. So again, that's presented as, look at the surrounding communities, they have ADUs, but you have to lay some context to that as well. Having said that, the council looked at the ordinance itself, looked at the requirements in the conditions. One of the concerns was the conditions relative to the detached units. And also, in putting that in context, as presented, this ordinance is a by right ordinance, which would allow somebody to put a rental apartment in a detached garage by right. That was concerning to the planning board, and having this be a by right ordinance was concerning. We don't know what the market acceptance in the city of Lowell is going to be for these. We can mention other towns, and I would caution you, even if the councilor mentions tonight yet another community, without everybody here having the full ordinance and knowing what the dimensional requirements are of that community, it's pretty hard to have an intelligent conversation about that. Also, the one off-street parking without having bedroom restrictions. There's no tie to the bedrooms. There was a draft ordinance in 2004 from the city of Lowell that had maximum parking requirements as well, because you could start to make these lots look like parking lots, even if you could provide with the off-street parking. Then there was also the idea of the detached units. What do we envision them? Do they look like separate bungalows that are sitting on the lot? Do they look like a garage that was converted? How do we handle that? Is there any review? When we looked at the requirement for owner occupancy, and it was touched on this evening, it was, well, how do we look at that and say the property is sold? If DPD doesn't receive a notice, how do they actually monitor that it's actually going to be owner occupied? And then the fact that the detached units refer to, and in the handout I gave everybody, there's also section 4.3.54, which talks about the setbacks for accessory uses in the city of Lowell, and this is what it refers to, that it would just be 5 feet. Well, I gave you the dimensional requirements for the other zones in the city, which the single-family zones for the most part are 10, some of 25. This reduces it to 5 feet. So you can actually have a rental unit within 5 feet of the property line, when we would require your primary residence to be at least 10 feet from the property line. Within that dimensional requirement, you look at the size of the lots here in the city of Lowell. They go down in the single-family zones to 7,000 square feet. The largest is 10,000 square feet, but this is allowed in every single zone, and it waives the lot area per dwelling unit. So in multifamily zones where there's a single-family home right now where you couldn't put a two-family, where you would need a variance because you don't meet that, by right, you could just put another rental unit. You just skirt all of that. So taking that into consideration and listening to the testimony, there were 7 conditions or 7 reasons why the planning board voted unanimously to forward a negative recommendation to this body relative to this ordinance as it is presented, as it is drafted. Number one, the board expressed concern about the potential increases to density that the proposed accessory dwelling unit ordinance may create. Two, the board expressed concern about allowing ADUs, particularly detached ADUs, by right rather than by special permit. The board suggested revisiting the minimum parking requirement created in the ordinance and investigating a potential maximum parking requirement. The board recommended further research into the lot sizes in each zone district in the city as they relate to the proposed ordinance. The board recommended further research into detached dwelling units and their effects on neighborhood character, as well as a design review process for detached ADUs. The board expressed concern regarding the monitoring and administration of the owner occupancy requirement stipulated in the ordinance. The board requested to add the definition of short-term rental to the proposed zoning amendment. I believe it is buried in other requirements here in the City of Lowell regulations, but it really should be part of this ordinance as well. And I will say the chairman made it very clear, and it was commented by a speaker, this eliminates single-family zoning in the city as presented by right. And also one of the concerns, because I think it was commented, because I know it's used across the country that it's going to devalue homes. No, what the concern is the exact opposite. It is going to make home ownership more costly here in the City of Lowell. You add a rental unit to a piece of property, and now the sales price of that goes up. So you may be creating some smaller rental units, but people even saying they're not going to open up to market. It's going to be friends, relatives, people they know. But if they go to sell that, now that home is going to cost more money for somebody to buy a home in the City of Lowell. So I would ask that you please do not move forward on this ordinance the way it is drafted. We have, as it was mentioned, we have a master plan process right now going on. We have a housing production plan going on right now. And those are all part of this. It should all be part of a comprehensive review. And again, I would ask you to reject the ordinance that is presented. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, members of the City Council. My name is Ron Gentle. I reside at 44 Delaware Ave in Lowell, Massachusetts. I'm here tonight to voice opposition to the proposed zoning ordinance for accessory dwelling units. I listened to the planning board. I listened to Vice Chair Jerry Frechette last week. There were 7 proposed reasons for no recommendation on the ADU ordinance. 3 of them really affect me, and I think affect a lot of the neighbors in the area that I live. Reason number 1 was density. Reason number 4, lot sizes. Reason number 5, detached dwelling units are of particular concern to myself and to my neighborhood. My neighborhood, majority of homes built in my neighborhood range in size from 7,200 square feet to 10,000 square feet. Construction of a detached dwelling unit on lots this small will affect the character of the neighborhood and will increase the density in that neighborhood. Second concern that I had is that no allowance of ADUs by right. This gives too much leeway for people to build ADUs without any input from the city whatsoever. I would suggest that any ordinance to adopt an ADU ordinance by the city must state that all ADUs, to include proposed detached units, be done by special permit, and the special permit must come from the planning board, not the zoning board of appeals. Twofold, this will allow oversight of the design review process and will also allow the city to create a database of all ADU applicants to monitor and administer whether that unit and that ADU is owner occupied. There's been a lot of discussion tonight from members in here who are in favor of the ADU ordinance. And I've heard a lot. Tonight, I sat through 2 zoning subcommittees. I sat through a neighborhood subcommittee. All the proponents talk about affordability of rental units in the city. Well, I looked at the proposed draft. It's silent with respect to affordability. There is not a single word in this draft ordinance that addresses the issue of affordability. As drafted, the ordinance before the council tonight will allow any single-family homeowner to construct an ADU and rent it at market rate. Market rates, I think, in the city right now are going between $1,400 and $2,000, depending where you're looking. In fact, during the May 2nd, 2023 City Council meeting, Councilor Drinkwater stated on the council floor that the Lowell proposed ADU ordinance, apples to the Salem ordinance. Well, I did my research on the Salem ordinance. The Salem ordinance, and if anybody wants a copy of it, give me my email and I will happily send it to you. The Salem ordinance is an affordable accessory dwelling ordinance, not just a standard ADU ordinance that allows a person by right to construct an ADU and sell it for market rate. Any ADU in Salem has to be an affordable ADU. And the ordinance further states in Salem that an ADU ordinance based on affordability, the applicant must go before the building. A building permit must be accompanied by a letter of intent signed by the homeowners, shall be submitted to the Department of Planning and Community Development that certifies that the rent of the affordable accessory dwelling unit will be at least 30% below the established fair market rent limit for the city of Salem as determined annually by the United States Department of Urban and Planning. That is not addressed, that is not stated in this ADU ordinance. This ADU ordinance, as drafted, Mr. Mnuchin was here at the planning board, and he said it was low effort work on this draft ordinance. It was a cut and paste. There was no thought. There was no input. There was no input from any of the city departments, city communities, city neighborhoods as to how it would affect them. I'll go back to the June 28th, 22 council meeting, the housing subcommittee. Councilor Getchia noted that we must move slowly and not alter anyone's quality of life. This proposed ADU ordinance, as drafted, will affect every person's quality of life in the city of Lowell. This must be sent back to the housing subcommittee, to the zoning subcommittee, to the planning department, and to the planning board to allow further input from each of those departments, to allow further input from the neighborhoods, to get people out into the neighborhoods, to let them know exactly what this ordinance does. It allows by right of market rate apartments. So I would ask that each council member tonight vote no on this ordinance as drafted. Thank you very much.
Councilors, Mr. Manager, my name is Jim Heller. I reside at 54 Parkview Avenue, and I think this ADU ordinance needs some work. I work a lot in the field of affordable housing. So I certainly realize that there are few cities in Massachusetts that need some work on this more than Lowell. However, it would also help if it were done right from the get-go. The issue is that I see with the number of exceptions that people are bringing up, and I've looked at it pretty carefully myself, this affects all of us who live in this city, is a definite lack of planning and in anticipation of the details and problems. There's a thing in business that they teach all of us in school that says that the planning on an issue should be commensurate with the risks involved, not to mention the unintended consequences that may arise. This is an issue that is far-reaching. It affects, as has been said over and over by people tonight, every neighborhood, every person that resides here, every person that has a business here, landlords, you name it, okay? It affects everybody. And yet we keep hearing, well, what about this problem? What about that problem? Nobody's making this up. These problems really exist. And I think it all comes down to density. Just to put some numbers into it, I'm a numbers guy. That's what I feel comfortable with, but the numbers affect us all. People talk about density. Lowell's the 7th most dense community in Middlesex County. We're already carrying our load pretty seriously, to put it mildly. Comparatively speaking, let's take a look at the towns that touch Lowell, okay, contiguous towns. There's not a town around here that has a density, right, as much as 1/5 as the city of Lowell. So maybe the problem isn't exactly being addressed in the right place, for starters, okay? Another thing that people bring up is that this is an inexpensive way to add to the housing stock. That'd be really nice if it were true. I spend a lot of time costing out development for developers, and what I see over and over is the costs have risen. If anybody here has looked at doing an addition to their house or having a new home constructed, or just even called the plumber, you've probably found out nothing has gotten cheaper in the last few years. To put a price tag on it, and where this will create risk for homeowners that want to do this, and this is something that should be addressed. Right now, we're probably looking at, for additions on homes, it sounds like a round number, but unfortunately, it's also a real number. You're looking at about $275 to $300 per square foot. Let's put a price tag on it, because a lot of the people that are looking at doing an accessory dwelling unit, it's driven by the fact that they've got a problem in their family. A child has gotten divorced. An elder family member needs to age in place. All those things are good. I'm for that. That's necessary. I mean, want to talk about the American way? That's the American way, okay? But we're going to have people getting in financial problems because, let's just put math to it. 900 square feet is the size of these units that will be, because people will be looking to do frequently as large as they can. They'll need room for people, especially if you're talking about 2 and 3 bedrooms. You're looking at these people making a $250,000 plus commitment. They're also doing this by either adding on to an existing home, converting a garage that doesn't have existing utility tie-ins. They're going to be placing themselves at risk. One thing that I think needs to be added to this, we do first-time home buyer education for people. It works absolutely great. If they're buying a rental property, they have to get landlord education. It's a mass housing rule. They put those rules in place for a reason. Why don't we add to it that we would suggest to people, if they're going to do this, that they've got to have some kind of training. It'll keep people out of trouble. The last thing we want to have is people with incomplete improvements to their homes. They're in financial trouble because a lot of these things are driven by a financial problem to begin with, and we're probably not supposed to make that worse. Last thing I'll say is, a lot of places that have adopted these ordinances are out in the West Coast. They've had some success. They've done a heck of a lot more planning, and I've researched this very carefully. They've done a lot more planning than this city. And these are cities that were built way after the city of Lowell started to get laid out in the early 1800s. Places like Bremerton, Washington, which, by the way, in many neighborhoods had 32% of the people in neighborhoods apply for one of these permits in the first years. So this may not exactly be incidental. And they don't have the density situations that we have to begin with, which is much greater. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is John Hamblett. I live at 495 Varnum Avenue. The first time I garnered the nerve to speak to the City Council was in 2006, and the subject was ADUs. Now, I don't think I've ever recalled in the last 17 years one issue where so many residents from so many neighborhoods have been involved. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's my perception that the conversation about ADUs is changing. It moved from pro versus con, us versus them, to we think we can do this, but it needs work. I ask this council to take the time to carefully consider what the residents of Lowell have taken the time to say. There's some very sharp minds, and they've considered the proposal, and they've given some good recommendations. This proposal can be improved, and don't we really want the best that we can get? This is going to take time, and I'm asking this council to send the proposal back and give it the time and the attention it deserves. We can do better. Thank you.
Councilor Murcia, did you have your hands up? Councilor Murcia, did you have your hands up?
Are there any more speakers?
Yes, I believe so. How many more speakers are there? Could you raise your hand? 1, 2, so 3 more?
Sure. That's fine.
Okay, please.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Daly, 35 Windward Road. I am not opposed to ADUs. As a taxpayer, I am opposed to the adoption of a flawed City of Lowell zoning law. I am here tonight to express my support for the Planning Board's recommendations concerning the City of Lowell's draft ADU ordinance, as well as encourage the City Council to go forward with the Planning Board recommendations. I spoke in great detail at the 17 July meeting of the Planning Board. The Planning Board has captured my concerns and the concerns of others within their recommendations to the Council. The Planning Board has done their job. The Planning Board did their due diligence on behalf of all of the residents of Lowell. The language in this ordinance needs to be reworked. The ordinance is a law and cannot be a work in progress. The city now needs to do their due diligence on behalf of all the residents of Lowell. They need to take the time to get this ordinance right. The City Council needs to move forward with the Planning Board recommendations. Any City Council vote to go forward with this ordinance as is and ignore the Planning Board's recommendations is irresponsible, wrong, and very telling in that the City Council will have done a disservice to all the residents of Lowell. Thank you.
Tom Flynn, sorry. Tom Flynn, 39 Waterford Street, Lowell. ADUs should not be allowed as of right or by right. They should require a special permit through the Planning Board. Need to have sufficient parking. Enforcement of owner-occupied, or is that owner-occupied just a red herring and will be quickly changed to builders come on in. Enforcement of the owner-occupied and defining consequences for violation of that when conditions are not met, and how many variances will be granted even though it's supposed to meet setbacks and all that. ADUs are being supported by many nonprofit groups. I just don't see what this is going to do to provide this income rental relief. Builders don't keep building if they're driving prices down. They keep building when prices are going up. One argument for ADUs is the family members. A second argument for ADUs to provide extra income, which we heard from Mr. Heller, that is not really a relief for those people, and it's not driving costs down. Some city councilors and nonprofits say this is a start. A start to what? Where is this going? Or is this a bait and switch to open the floodgates for out-of-town developers? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Mary Lou White, 158 4th Avenue, Lowell. Been a resident of Lowell for 68 years. I attended the planning board meeting last week and now this meeting, and of all the conversations I've heard about ADUs, pros or cons, I've yet to hear one single family homeowner come forward and say they're being denied their rights to turn their property into a multi-unit rental property or to provide low-income housing or any kind of plan on how that would be low-income housing considering the cost of conversions. And just don't think, I think we're jumping way ahead by voting on proposing that this ordinance go through. I think you need to listen to all the cons on this and have the city employees write a better plan and move forward and vote on that and get more citizen input. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Curtis LeMay. I live at 40 Robert Street in the Pawtuckaville section of Lowell. I'm not going to rehash what most people have said here, but I want to personally say I have not heard much about oversight or enforcement in reference to this. Let me shut this off. And I think that's the key of everybody here. I think the building department is personally inundated as it is right now. Looking at this and all the variables, it's like you're going to need another department to enforce this. So I hope the fees are accordingly in order to afford to do it, because I think they have their problems as it is. Being from Pawtuckaville, we're very dense. I can tell you I don't have any. All I have is on-street parking. And that's with a lot of families in Pawtuckaville. And I think Centerville is somewhat the same. But I'm only going to speak about my neighborhood. And obviously 30+ plus years ago, we put in a sign ordinance for parking that people that owner occupied were allowed one parking spot on a number of their street, whatever the street was, not the side if you were on a corner lot, just one. And if there's those that currently exist with only one spot, who gets it? The person with the ADU or the owner that lives there? But no one's going to kid me that there's only one vehicle in one house, because that don't happen today. It didn't happen 35 years ago. We needed to enforce it. The police chief said he didn't have the help to do it. The police chief from the campus of ULowell, before it was ULowell, said the students are off campus. We don't have authority to go off campus. I was fortunate to be working at the sheriff's department, and the sheriff deputized the ULowell police force so they could go off, because the drinking and the partying, as I said the last time, I had neighbors come to my house crying, literally, that have lived there for 3 decades or many, many years more, and said that they're going to have to move if they can't keep the neighborhood quiet. I just don't see where this is going to work out, because I need to see who's going to be out there watching all of this. And I think currently what you have, the building department has their hands full. So I haven't heard much talk about that, but I hope there's an in-depth, and I applaud all the other speakers, whether you're from the planning board. That was a unanimous vote, by the way. I mean, you know, let's not kid ourselves. These people, Mr. Fischette here has been on there for 15 years or more that I know of, and he gives a lot of his time to this city and the neighborhoods, and he knows what he's talking about, as well as a lot of other people. So let's not put the cart before the horse. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Chow, City Manager Golden. Thank you very much, members of the council, for this opportunity to speak. 5 minutes ago, I wasn't going to speak just because of the length of time, and most of the stuff that I'm going to cover has been spoke of. But I feel it's this important.
Would you please state your name first?
My apologies. I did the same thing last week. Alan Saber, 33 Dunbar Ave. I live on the nicest street in the nicest section of the city. And it's not that I don't want change, but the change that's proposed in front of you needs more than just work. You were given numbers at the last meeting of the people who spoke in favor of and opposed. And I have a question for you. At the beginning of the meeting, the chairman, whose name escapes me, I apologize, asked the department hosting this, how do you want to run the meeting? Do you want to take questions as they go along, or are we going to write them down and approach those questions? You would think, how many, 13? How many people spoke? Spoke against, with a lot of questions. There was no response from this department asking us, the people who spoke against us, well, how is it you feel this way? You're not understanding this. I think that tells a little bit. I don't know if this is being pushed somewhere through them, but if it is, it's got to stop. We've got to put this together properly, and it isn't. I'm just going to run through really fast a couple of the items on this one from last week on this proposal. This proposal. On one page, and they're not numbered, so I apologize. I'm going to jump around. Housing options for seniors. I've got a couple of seniors on my street that live alone. Husbands have passed away, kids have moved out. I don't care what you're going to cost to put in an apartment or to amend what they have. There's no way on God's green earth that they're going to get affordable housing here. They're going to get market value. I have a house in my neighborhood that you could putt to from my backyard. You can go on to 7 different .com sites, see this house, They're renting bedrooms by the month. And if anyone's interested, August is available. $1,800 a month. Affordable housing, I'm not sure. Hello, I'm not sure where you're talking about where affordable housing is coming in. A dollar amount has never been discussed. And that house, by the way, occupies 6 cars. And they didn't go through any proper channels. Oh, and it became so lucrative, the owner moved and lives in Chelmsford and has a beautiful estate in North Chelmsford right now and rented out her 4th house. There was an article, I'm sure many of you saw this in the paper last week. This is a development, and the word was used earlier tonight, multi-generational homes in Hudson, New Hampshire, on 2-acre lots. And they describe it as 3 and 4 bedroom main homes with attached 1 or 2 bedroom secondary homes. Call it what you want. It's a dressed up ADU. It's a dressed up apartment they're renting. And I guarantee you they're not getting $500 and $600 a month. They're just not. It doesn't say, it doesn't have a, the home itself, I'm sorry. I don't know how they're going to handle it. Yeah, it's priced at $1.2 million to start. All the other issues that were discussed, it really is very vague. Parking. What are you going to do in the wintertime? There was a gentleman here, I think, that spoke from D Street. My brother used to live on D Street. I don't even want to know what's going to happen over there when they start allowing, even if they do find a way to say, yeah, just 1 car. And again, Mr. Flynn just brought up accountability. I mean, I don't know how you hold these people accountable. You can say that they can register down at the courthouse. You can do all of that stuff. That inspector's office has got their hands full now. You're just burdening them with more as it's constituted like this. I would strongly suggest that you rethink this. Send it back. Vote no on this as it stands right now. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Anyone else here to speak in opposition? No other speaker. This portion is now closed. I will now open it to the council member. Councilor Musia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to thank all the speakers. It isn't easy coming here, sitting here and still be awake. I'm very impressed by that. I feel it's only fair to explain why I don't support the ADU ordinance as presented. People much greater than me, with more knowledge on zoning issues, professionals who deal with zoning more often than I, namely the planning board, voted unanimously with a negative recommendation regarding the proposed zoning ordinance amendment request on the ADU accessory dwelling units. I agree that this ordinance as is will increase the density by not properly defining the minimum parking requirements. For example, this ordinance does not state how many people can live in an ADU. If it's 3 adult people, each with a car, 1 car has to park off the street, that's the requirement, while 2 cars are now on the street. How congested will this become on a rather narrow single-family street? And if you take the garage that is made into a ADU, then there's more parking that could have been, but is now livable. So more cars will be on the street. What happens to the character of the neighborhood? Is this attitude going to be, I don't care where they park as long as I take in the extra income? The ordinance is poorly written, lacking in details, not clearly defined, leaving one confused, not to mention the word ever anywhere, affordability. Your single-family home will become 2-family properties. There is no number of bedrooms. This ordinance is lacking enforcement. We are behind on inspections. Who's going to enforce owner occupancy or even monitor this? 68% of the rental units in Lowell are owned by people who do not even reside in Lowell, never mind within rental property. Lowell is the 7th most dense community in Massachusetts, as someone stated as well. These zoning changes should not be done with just so the city of Lowell can say that we are doing something about the housing issue. I asked that we insert into our ordinance all the good rules that other towns adopted and structured into their ordinance, but I don't see it. It was never done. If not done correctly, this will have horrible consequences that cannot be undone. We should not let our city become an experiment. I will not destroy the character of the neighborhoods by supporting or overcrowding more cars on the street, or an ordinance that is not completely clear as the questions that are not even answered. So having said that, we already have an ADU anyway. There are, and I'm not saying it because I don't like ADUs. I like to see someone's mother be able to live on the property in their own private residence, 900 square feet. I understand that. I have 2 in my immediate neighborhood. I don't have a problem with it. We have off-street parking. We have the requirements. We have an addition to someone's home that you wouldn't even notice. We have another home diagonally across the street from me with another family that live upstairs. It's a single family dwelling, but there's no main door that separates. It's just open. One family lives upstairs, one family lives downstairs in a single family area. I'm just telling you that it's available now if you do the right thing. But to add extra things and not define it, it has to be tweaked a lot more, and I'm not supporting it the way that it is here. Thank you to everybody that spoke. I agree with the people that spoke in opposition. Thank you.
Councilor Drinkwater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to speak as one of the original sponsors of the motion to begin looking at the topic of accessory dwelling units as a way to add to the available housing within the city to address what I think is definitively a housing affordability and housing availability crisis that we have to address in a number of different ways. And there was a lot said here tonight. I'm not going to try to address every single point that was raised, but I do want to address one. And what I heard a lot of here tonight is that the speakers that weren't necessarily opposed to the concept of ADUs, they were opposed to the current draft, and to send it back, that it needs more work. I'm looking at the minutes of a meeting from June 28th, 2022, just over a year ago, which was the first joint subcommittee meeting that met on that original motion that was filed in this term of the City Council. There wasn't yet a draft ordinance to review at that time. The meeting was held to explore the possibility of requesting an ordinance. And you can look at the minutes and you can see many of the same names that are in the room here tonight, not supportive of ADUs, but opposed to a specific draft, but speaking in opposition to the concept of ADUs. And as that joint subcommittee continued to meet, had requested a draft ADU ordinance from DPD, got that draft, reviewed that draft over the course of multiple meetings. What you really continued to hear was a lot of yes or no. Yes, this is a good idea, or no, don't proceed with this. It was really actually hard to dig in and try to find some common ground on a way to move forward. And here we are. But I do want to say, I want to push back on a lot of what was said here tonight. This is a good draft ordinance that's before us. This city's Department of Planning and Development did put in time researching what other localities, and there are many other localities, what they've done with respect to their ADU ordinances. It's drawn from multiple different municipalities that have this in place right now. Some are more restrictive than others, but I think what you see overall is municipalities that are realizing the need to loosen up what are currently restrictive ordinances and make it easier to add additional housing stock to their communities. And you can point to many of them, but this is a good ordinance, and we're not doing something novel here. This has been tested. This has been in place in a number of different communities, some recently passed. And I have compared the ordinance that's in place to cities like Salem, like Haverhill, and I am aware that Salem has an affordability component built into theirs. That was something I strongly considered in putting this forward as a policy. I think there, in many, many facets, our ordinance is very similar to the city of Salem's. But the city of Salem has had trouble getting ADUs permitted. And there is data out there to show that without any sort of restrictions on what you can charge for rent, by nature of their size, ADUs do tend to rent at a more affordable rate than what's typically available on the rental apartment market. So this is not something new. This is in place in many different communities, and what I haven't heard here tonight are horror stories of ADUs in other communities. Whether an ADU got there through a special permit process, whether that ADU is limited to a family member living there, it got there one way or another in so many of the communities that are surrounding Lowell or other cities throughout Massachusetts. And throughout all the speaking here tonight, what I haven't heard is some community saying, how can we walk back our ADU ordinance? This isn't working for our city or town. What I do know of going on is cities looking at restrictions like limitations to family members, like the special permit process, and trying to figure out how can we make it easier. Because, again, I go back to the fact that the reason this was brought forward is it is one way through many of other strategies to address an affordability crisis within the city. You look down the agenda tonight, which I'm not sure that we'll get to, but you have a lot related to the affordability crisis. We have taxpayer subsidization of affordable housing projects through the Community Preservation Act, through ARPA. These are good things. These are good things that have been prioritized by this city council to address the development of housing within the city. You look at the MBTA Communities Act, which is another piece of legislation that we'll consider tonight that would make it easier to build additional housing within the city. So you have multiple strategies on the agenda here tonight to get at this housing affordability crisis and this housing availability crisis. And I think throughout the city, each and every corner of the city, every neighborhood has to play its part in trying to contribute to the availability of housing that we desperately need. So what you see here is one strategy among several just on the agenda here tonight, but every particular strategy is important. Is this going to solve the crisis by itself? Absolutely not. Is this going to create an overwhelming amount of housing? No. It's going to be very incremental, but multiple incremental strategies will add up to addressing this problem. So just wanted to address some of what was discussed here tonight. I understand that there are changes that are going to be put forward by members of this council here tonight. I welcome that. I have been welcoming that through the subcommittee process. And ultimately, I want to see these concerns that were brought forward by the public and that have been brought forward by members of this council brought up, discussed, and addressed through the amendment process. Some may be supported, some may not. But let's have that discussion. Let's have that discussion and try to craft an ordinance that this city council can be comfortable with and that can put additional housing on the market that will help residents of this city. So I look forward to hearing what other members have to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Before I call on the next council to speak, there's another line item on the agenda that is relevant to a discussion with this ordinance. That is line item 5.3, Communication Planning Board Recommendation. I'd like to get a motion to combine that, take that out of order, to bring that to have discussion with this public hearing by Councilor Gishia, second by Councilor Drinkwater. Motion is passed. To complete reading, the line item 5.3 is Communication Planning Board Recommendation to propose zoning code amendment regarding accessory dwelling units. Councilor Robinson, you had your hands up earlier.
Thank you. I too was one of the co-sponsors of this motion, and I definitely looked at let's explore the ADUs. I think it is, as was mentioned, it could potentially be another tool when we're looking at increasing inventory. I think some of the speakers, spot on. Something that really stood out to me, and I think it was one of the speakers, Mr. Mead. I think he was brutally honest. ADUs is going to put money into a lot of middle and working class single-family homeowners' pockets. It's going to put additional inventory into our community that, to be honest, those that are struggling and looking for smaller size units probably will be priced out of. $1,500 a month, market rate, say 1 bedroom, 500 square feet, as is. Say that person that needs that unit qualifies for utility subsidies through an organization like a CTI. Now, the way this draft is written, you lose your subsidies. There's no subsidies on utilities because it's the single-family homeowner that has to tie into their existing utility. So you factor in full utilities monthly added on to your $1,500 market rent rate, in addition to water and sewers going up, whatever that looks like. So that $1,500 a month unit just inflated to about $1,900 to $2,100 for that same unit because you lost your subsidies. That's one potential negative of it. I really think the Salem rule, if that's what we're looking to spur, is increase affordable options to our inventory, as well as assist with family members. I think that's something definitely well worth looking at, that affordable language that's in the Salem unit. I also think we need to do, if we're going to pass any form of this, a 1-year sunset clause, so we can come back and look at this in a year, review, and see what data do we have now, how did this impact neighborhood by neighborhood, and is it worth continuing? I think a sunset clause is something that would definitely be justified. I also just found out tonight, and I've asked this question a million times, can we restrict the ADU process from utilizing the variance process? I've been repeatedly told no. People have a right to go through the variance process, through the zoning board. In Centerville, I've seen it a million times, where the neighborhood's wishes and concerns haven't been addressed. So, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the city solicitor, could we restrict the ADUs from the variance process in the city, if that's the wish of the council?
Mr. Solicitor?
John McKenna from the Law Department. If you make a requirement for these ADUs that it's by right, so it meets it by right, and you're allowing something to be done by right, if it's you don't meet that requirements, if you don't have the setbacks, you don't have the parking requirements. So if what you're trying to do with this is to add these additional units, and you meet all the requirements to do it, then you can do it. But you can restrict it to say you don't have it by right. You can't do it by right if you're required to have a variance for setbacks for the addition to the property and things like that. So that's where that goes. The whole conversation about these ADUs and making amendments on the floors, whenever you have an amendment to the zoning bylaws, you're amending a bylaw that has been done and put together. You make these amendments to these bylaws, there can be significant consequences to other areas of the bylaws. So all these questions that you ask on this, they're all great questions, and there is a ton of planning that goes on to this, and Councilor Drinkwater did a lot of work putting this forward in the sponsors of these bills, but they all have to be considered. And Attorney Barry and Mr. Frechette and the people with experience on these things have put a lot of information in here. But to answer your question, the council has the ability to create these ordinances with the authority to do it by proper procedures. And this is the procedure you do it with recommendations from the planning board. And then you come and you have a hearing and you get the advice, and then you create the ordinance. So it's the will of the council what you want to do and how you want to do it.
Well, my question to you is, legally, are we allowed to exempt ADUs from the variance process?
My answer to that is, if you want to create an ordinance that allows you to have additional units within a single-family area, and they have to do it by right if they meet the qualifications and the requirements of the other zoning requirements. So if you have the setbacks, you have the parking, whatever you need to do it, then you meet it by right. And that's my answer.
Thank you. Another point, last couple points. I think parking in my district, very dense, and I'm sure there's plenty others here that will testify to that. It should be a minimum, in my opinion, of 1 car per bedroom when we're looking at this, off-street. In addition, I don't see how, I hope we're not looking to subtract to add. In other words, if I have an existing 2-car garage, those are 2 off-street spaces, and I don't care if you have that packed with camping goods. You cannot use that space because you're losing 2 off-street spots, putting it into an ADU, and all you're required currently is to replace 1 off-street. So the 2 that you just lost to convert into an ADU are gone now. Those are on the street. The 1 off-street is all that's required. So I really think there are a lot of things that have been brought out by the public repeatedly, and I hope we can get to something that everyone sits back and says, I think this will work for our city. But right now, it almost seems like we're trying to shove a square peg in a round hole, and I can't support it as written. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Chow. First, I would like to thank all the speakers. I think for or against ADUs, the way it's written right now, it's important to understand that they love their city, or they wouldn't sit here this long and go through all of this information and try to digest it all in one moment. But there's one common ground that you hear from all of them. And one of the speakers in favor of it said, he said that it was not a perfect ordinance, but it's acceptable to them. And I don't know that Lowell is at the point where we can accept things that we don't work hard for. It's a working class city. We work hard for our land. We work hard for our property. Everybody in here wants the best for everybody. But I think we have plenty of opportunity here to go back and realize some of the things that are spoken. Whether someone puts something forward tonight on amendments to this, I'm not in favor of it. I just heard from a solicitor, that an assistant solicitor, that more information is still coming out, and it can be digested and changed before we even get to this stage. There's no reason to rush this through. And we've been talking about this. And when we talk about horror stories from other places, let's talk about Arlington. Arlington has had 0 applications for ADUs. I hope there's no horror stories from Arlington. When we talk about all the other places, there's minimum square footage requirements. Some are up to 1.5 acres before you can even do it. In most of them, when you look at Tingsboro, it says family only, no detached. Drake, family only, no detached. Tewksbury, minimum 1 acre, family only. I mean, you're trying, Chelmsford, family only. We're really trying to push things through when we have plenty of time. The city itself is 187 years old. We've survived. What's a couple weeks? What's a couple months to try to do what people want to see in their neighborhoods? We're here to represent them, not ourselves. And not this made-up thing that we're going to solve affordable housing, and you know what? The homeless, we're going to have a cure. Because the homeless is much, much deeper than an apartment. I hate to tell people in this room today. We have mental health issues we should be lobbying the state for and trying to fix that, but instead we're going to use that as a speaking point for ADUs. At what point are we going to start looking to our residents and saying, okay, let's sit down and have a clear discussion? 4.5 hours, the zoning and housing met. We've already spent 2 hours here. And the information that keeps coming out, we gain more knowledge. So I don't see how we can sit back, and then in the interim, you find out that there's a Lowell Forward master plan and housing plan going on. And we're spending almost $500,000 with a outside agency looking at all of our housing and master plan going forward. Why would we not use that resource? I have 35 years in municipal government and operations and have never seen anything like this before, where we're just going to push something together and say, here you go, and let's use it as a working document. We went out and we tried to restrict speed limits down to 25 miles an hour. Why didn't we just set them at 120 and say, okay, we'll live with that? And then as, people, whatever happens, we'll fix it going forward. We have neighborhoods overrun, and, the hard part of our government right now, and the manager has said this over and over again, even in his budget presentation, I'm doing what the council wants us to do. We're reactive government. I call on Branch Street because the place is a complete disaster down there. We have to call. We don't even have services that drive by and understand what's going on in our neighborhoods. But yeah, let's put more in our neighborhoods and more in our neighborhoods. We have to call every day on a park that's not cleaned. We have problems all throughout the city, and every councilor in here has made those phone calls, trying to get better at it, trying to get better. The manager was handed these cards, and here we are. We're trying to figure it out. There's so many notes to think about. We don't have maximum bedrooms defined. We don't have maximum parking defined, maximum number of people to occupy. Already on that Branch Street, Councilor Robinson and I walked up to the door and it said $60 a night, $80 for 2 people, and if you have a car, it's $100. We aren't even defined on, if we can or can't do these things. We can't even control that. We have scheduled inspections to rentals in the city and are required to have them done, and those aren't being done, as many of the speakers have said. We looked at the districts that are outlined in this recommendation, and every single one of them is okay for ADUs, as someone else said. Special permits versus variances, we just learned more from the law department than I've learned in the last year, because we only had 4.5 hours at one place, and thankfully Councilor Mercier had another one with the neighborhood subcommittee where we learned more. And the planning board is absolutely right. But before the planning board even made those statements, I wasn't for this. Because we got a draft after the housing and zoning met. They didn't even have the draft at the time they were meeting. So they didn't even know what they were pushing forward. They didn't have a complete draft at that point. We got it the next day, and then I sent it out to the councilors who didn't have it. I just think if we're going to sit back and do it, and I applaud my friend Councilor Drinkwater, who sits next to me, for saying, he's willing to sit back and discuss it more. So if the makers of the motion between Councilor Drinkwater and Councilor Robinson are willing to have more discussion, then this is a no-brainer. I don't think we need more discussion tonight. We should just push it back to the DPD, push it back to the committees, subcommittees. Let's have those open discussions. Nobody in here can say that these people back here, these residents, aren't willing to move an inch or yet, because we've moved. Everybody has moved. Everybody has listened, as Councilor Drinkwater had said. I just don't understand what the rush is to get this through tonight, and I won't be in favor of any changes to it just to get it through as a rubber stamp. I think we need experts at the table, as the solicitor's office came through tonight. I need the DPD at the table, and I need to understand exactly what the ramifications, the decisions that we're going to make tonight are in full view of the council and the residents. Thank you.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just echo my colleague's sentiments that he just brought up, especially about the density in the neighborhoods. When I'm out talking to residents in the neighborhood, especially around Back Central, Sacred Heart, Sweet Village, what they're concerned about is the cars on the sidewalks, the cars blocking crosswalks, parking at street corners. And this isn't just happening because people just want to cause trouble and they want to park in inappropriate places. It's happening because there's too much density in the neighborhood and there's no place for them to park. So it really causes issues. They're also concerned about absentee landlords. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to enforce any of these things completely at this point in time. We have issues. I have issues with the ordinance as it's written. There's no setback. Somebody could put a detached garage unit with a resident in it right on your property line. I think there needs to be a setback. There's no design standards around height, setbacks, landscaping, architectural plans for detached units. I think detached units should be subject to site plan review with the planning board. There's an insufficient parking requirement, in my opinion. I think there needs to be at least one parking space per bedroom and some configuration about how many residents are already there using the parking spaces. I think the Zoning Board of Appeals issue, we need to have further discussions with our legal department. And I think we need to talk about whether or not this will apply to non-conforming lots or not. There needs to be some minimum lot size, because as I mentioned, density is a real issue in some of our neighborhoods. So that's why at this point in time, I can't afford it. I think it should go back for further discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Kness?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to thank everyone who's come down to speak on this issue tonight or any of the multiple meetings that we've had through this course. I think that this has been, in my time on the council, one of the highest levels of engagement from the public on anything we've done. And I've appreciated that, because I think that having those voices in the room, even when some of us don't agree, at the end, it makes for a better ordinance, and we're on the road to doing that. A few things I just want to address real quick that have been mentioned tonight. One thing that was mentioned is that ADUs already exist. There's already a path to ADUs. In our current zoning code, the only time you can have a permitted ADU is if you are in an urban single-family zone in a single-family house. An urban single-family zone, on the chart that Mr. Frechette gave us, thank you, has a minimum lot size of 3,000 square feet. Urban single-family zone, out of all the single-family zoning, is the one that is least likely to have the space to accommodate an additional unit, whether it's attached or detached. So urban single-family zoning covers less than 2% of all the land area in the city. So I think it's misleading to say we have ADUs in Lowell, when 98% of the land in Lowell, you cannot put an ADU regardless of what your built environment looks like. The next thing I want to mention is I looked at a lot of data as we were going through this process, just to understand where we are, where we're going, and what the housing situation looks like. The median single-family home in Lowell currently costs over 6 times the median household income in the city of Lowell. Fidelity says that you should be an affordable home would be something 3 to 5 times the household's annual income. So that tells me that our current single-family market is not for the median household in Lowell. And I think we just need to have that conversation and recognize that for ourselves whenever we're having any kind of housing discussion. The median household in Lowell cannot afford to buy a single-family home in Lowell. The housing market is out of whack. That is true in Lowell, that is true in Massachusetts, it is true in New England. We can't fix that by ourselves. No way, no how. But we can certainly make some impact here in the city by creating these opportunities for smaller units. Smaller units should theoretically rent for less than a larger unit. If you go to rent a 2-bedroom apartment at the Boot Mills or one of the other mills downtown that's somewhere between 1,300 and 1,500 square feet, the price of an 800 or 900 square foot ADU should be significantly lower than that, just based on market conditions. The market rate is not going to be the same for a smaller unit as a larger unit. That is where the affordability piece comes in. Yes, we could add affordability restrictions as other communities have done, but I think that would tamper down the ability to create some of these. Several people have mentioned the master plan steering committees and the housing production plan committees. I've been serving as the district city council representative on the master plan steering committee. Many of the meetings I've attended, ADUs have been talked about. And I have to say that at least in the subgroups I've been in, it's been overwhelmingly positive. People have been in favor of ADUs, unlike some other things we've heard. Additionally, every District 4 representative or resident that has spoken to me or spoken in one of these meetings about this ordinance has been in favor, with one solitary exception. That one exception is someone who was, quote, neutral on the ordinance. Every other person in my district has been supportive of this ordinance. Because of that, and because of the housing situation, because honestly, I think it's just the right thing to do, I will be supporting this ordinance tonight. I understand that one of my colleagues will have some amendments, and I look forward to hearing them and entertaining those. The last thing I want to mention is we've heard a lot of talk about making this ordinance better. And I agree, we should make it as best as we possibly can. However, what better means to me isn't necessarily what better means to anyone else. Personally, I think this ordinance should be less restrictive. It should be more permissive. In my eyes, that would make for a better ordinance. But I would be shocked if that was true for all of my colleagues or all of the people who came to spoke tonight. We all have a different opinion of what better means. And I think it's important that we take a step. As someone mentioned earlier, taking a small step is better than taking no step. Someone else mentioned that they first came to speak to the Lowell City Council in 2006 on ADUs. 2006. I think we've taken a lot of time, and I think it's important that we try to do something. And I'm fine if we do something that's scaled back. I'm fine if we do something that's more restrictive than I'd like. I'm fine if we do something, but we got to do something. I think the housing situation is clear. There's not enough housing. We aren't building enough housing. Since we've finished redeveloping all the mills, what's next? What is Lowell's housing strategy going forward? Yes, that needs to be a larger, more in-depth discussion. But I think no matter what that strategy looks like, ADUs need to be a part of it. Thank you.
Councilor Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think when my colleague, Councilor Robinson and Councilor Drinkwater filed the motion, they spot on that we do have to address affordable housing and housing shortage, because we heard it. We heard from many organizations and individuals who agree with my colleague that we need to address this issue. ADU is just one of many solutions to address the affordable housing and housing shortage. I heard most speakers tonight, they said it, they're not opposed to ADU, but they oppose the draft ordinance. They raise concern such as limit number of bedroom, should define short-term rental, issue with enforcement. If I was not mistaken, a while back, I know Manager Golden went on WCAP. Oh, I didn't hear it either from the developmental service that they do have enforcement issue. Manager Golden said in WCAP that if the city grant this ADU with amendment, whatever that this council proposed, that the city has the resource to monitor that. Like most speakers, I support ADU for the reason that those who spoke support it. I'm not going to rehash it. I also agree that the draft ordinance need to be made better. So I would like to make the following amendment to the proposed or the draft ordinance, ADU ordinance. To amend the amendment to the required special permit for detached accessory structure, which is under section 4A I. Second, amendment to the cap of number of ADU per city council district per year. We could say 5 per year. I do not envision that will be the whole year where you will have 40 ADU in the city. But let's put a cap, let's say 5. Amendment to the limited of number of bedroom, we could say 2, because you don't want a couple with child, not be able to live in an ADU with their in-law or with their grandparent. 4th, the amendment to define short-term rental. I think I would ask the city manager to direct appropriate department, in this case, I would say a DPD, to create a definition of short-term rental for the purpose of this ordinance. Those are the 4 amendments to the draft ADU ordinance, Mr. Mayor. That's my motion.
Motion by Councillor Nguyen to make the amendment, second by Councillor Yam. Before we take a vote on that, I'm going to allow all the councillors to speak, still relevant to the ordinance. Before you speak, Councillor Gishat, did anybody who did not speak would like to speak now? Go with Councillor O'Rourke and then Councillor Yam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate all the speakers that came out for and against, and I was actually extra, I guess, happy or, recognize that those that were against spoke of not totally against the ADUs and the necessary changes that would like to be seen to the current ordinance. I think that some of the amendments that Councilor Nguyen made should satisfy most, but maybe not all of those concerns. We do need to do this the right way. This ADUs is something that I've believed in for a long time now. I have not hidden that fact at all. And what we can do to, my concern at the time, and still was major, is to keep the family in place. I think with the ordinance that it's written, and especially with these amendments in place, and you add things like shared utilities, you have to follow building codes when you're doing an ADU and the 900 square feet. When you're talking about 2x6 walls exterior and 2x4 walls interior, you're really down to about 725 square feet. And when you add in a bedroom and a closet to make it a bedroom, and a kitchenette and a closet and a living room, which are all required bathrooms that's required by the building code. The idea of 3 and 4 bedrooms in an ADU is, is just incorrect. So I think I'm interested in more discussion on Councilor Nguyen's amendments. I think that they are worthy. And again, I'm happy that most everybody that spoke tonight were not against the idea of having ADUs in the city of Lowell. I think it goes a long way, like I said, to keeping people in their homes, keeping families together, and look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Yam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to take the opportunity to thank all the speakers who came out for not supporting the draft amendment. I thank them and I listen to what they have to say. But for me, I will support the ADU for this reason, because the residents in my District 7 are low-income families, and also most of them are immigrants with large family. Allow ADU, that means that to have the same entrance, same look as a single home, but allow family members to have a separate living unit with kitchens and bathroom and a separate entrance that will go out, to the back of the building, and the appearance to be the same as a single home. I have my neighbor who are elderly. Her children are all grown up, and she has a home, a large home, and she thought that if I have an opportunity to turn a portion of my home into an ADU, that will help me pay rent. And then also allow me to stay and live in my homes where I raise my children and I know my neighbors, and I do not want to sell and move out of Lowell. I love the city. So these are the reason I think ADU will help these families together, to stay together or to stay in the city. I support by rights because some of these low-income families cannot afford to hire a lawyer. Since most of them don't speak very good English, they will be intimidating in going in front of the planning board or the zoning board of appeal due to the fact they're not familiar with the law and due to the fact that their English is not sufficient. So they have to hire an attorney to represent them to get this. Someone spoke about, oh, we already have ADU. No, we have in the city, it's the in-law apartment. The in-law apartment is not by right. You have to go in front of the zoning board of appeal or planning board. And that for my constituent, they have to hire an attorney, which they cannot afford. So therefore, there's not many of them that will go forward to create an in-law apartment. People talked about density and characteristic changing of the neighborhood. Let's forget a moment that we do not have ADU. I'm in the real estate business, a real estate professional. I've seen many families moving from the Boston area to the city of Lowell. They purchase a two-family home for $500. They think they got a bargain because they have a large family. They cannot afford it in the city of Everett, Malden, but come to Lowell, they can afford it with $500,000. And to them, they would take the commuter rail and go back to Boston. So forget for a moment, we're not talking about ADU. The parking issue, the parking will be because the population growth, people have cars to travel, so we cannot prevent people from moving into the city of Lowell. So the parking, it will be there. It's a problem as the population grow. But by allow ADU, keep family together, but also some of those families as a startup, they just start out. They are low-wage worker. They work in the restaurant downtown. They are nursing aide. So this would allow them to save money so that one day they will take the first-time home buyer class and then purchase a home of their own in the city of Lowell. So that's the reason I'm supporting this by rights. And lastly, I would support the motion amendment by Councillor Nguyen, and I will even go as far as if the ADU does not meet the qualification as the assistant solicitor said, then they need a special permit, to move forward with the ADU. I will even go as far. So I think the proposed change will help, it address some of the concern of the speaker tonight. So I'm looking forward to move this motion, move these proposed changes forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I'm glad that the amendments were made tonight by Councilor Nguyen. I thank all the speakers that came down. This has been a hot topic for the last year or so. It's something that the city desperately needs. It's going to help affordable housing options. It's not going to solve housing crisis, but it's going to help the affordable housing to give us some options. A lot of people did say that they weren't totally against this, but would like to see some amendments, and that's fair. Some of the issues that do need to be addressed as a city, are the other issues which have nothing to do with ADUs, but the other situations where people are taking advantage and they're renting out their rooms or houses and they're doing it illegally. Yes, that needs to stop immediately. It needs to be addressed. If we have to hire more inspectors, whatever we need to do, that needs to be handled. Mr. Saber has spoken on this a number of times. I don't know why the situation's still continuing. He's been speaking about it for months. But in my mind, this has nothing to do with the ADU situation. So I'm going to vote for the amendments, and I'm going to keep my vote for the ADUs. Thank you.
All the councilors have spoken. I understand that some councilors spoke before, would like to make another comment. We'll start with Councilor Robinson.
Thank you. So I guess we're making amendments to this draft on the floor. First amendment is I'd like to add a 1-year sunset clause that will be reviewed.
Councilor Robinson, so if you would request more amendments, there's a motion that was second already. You would, if the maker of the amendment motion, if he would be accepting to accept the amendment requested by you.
Sure. Do we have to take a roll call on the proposed amendment from my colleague first, and then I can make mine separately, so we're not tying them all together?
Yes.
Okay, so I would move to at least roll call vote on my colleague's amendments that he put on the floor.
Okay, before we do roll call, I did say the councilor could speak one more time. Councilor Kishia.
Thank you. I'm not even sure what we're voting on. Through you to the city solicitor. In this amendment, it says cap 5 per district per year. Is that legal?
Mr. Solicitor?
You know, I saw that amendment. I think that would be an issue, because if you have a zoning ordinance and it creates the capacity to do something, you have to have uniformity throughout that district. So if you have the ability to get an ADU in your district by right, but you allow 5 people to apply, does the 6th person not being allowed to do it could present an issue. So that particular aspect of that I would have a problem with. But, you know, again, having amendments on the floor presented like that create an issue. So I would have an issue with that particular thing from a legal standpoint.
Mr. Mayor, define short-term rental. We don't even have a definition, but we're voting on an amendment to create a definition. So that's why we need to have another meeting. You can't just sit here and whip things against the wall when this means a lot to the residents. And we just whip this against the wall, and you just heard the solicitor say that. Then you come back and say, okay, I'm in favor of an amendment that I don't know what the definition of the short-term rental is even going to be. So, but I'm in favor. Let's take the vote. I mean, this is not justice to the residents. We should send it back and actually understand what we're voting on and get legal opinions on things before we do these things. I mean, I understand everybody wants this, but again, we all want it. We just have different ways, as Councilor Janess said, to get to the same ending. And these amendments, I would caution the rest of the board even to support, because, as the solicitor just said, he's cautioning against it. And then you're looking at the short-term rental. We didn't even define it, but we have it as an amendment. So I would caution this board to even support this. I would ask them to vote it down and actually push it back to the DPD, and let's ask them these questions to add to the policy, and they know where we stand on it. They've heard everything before us. Thank you.
I'm not going to ask for a vote yet, Councilor Mercy. I'm going to call an order that had the hands raised.
Oh.
Are we going to go to Councilor Scott?
Thank you. My comment was actually just very similar to Councilor Gitchie's that he just said, as far as I don't think we should just be throwing random items out right now on the floor without vetting them at all. I mean, I want parking not subject to relief through a variance, but I would like to hear from the solicitor. I think this is something that should go back to a housing subcommittee. Right. We're really close here. We're not all in disagreement. I think there's a conversation to be had where we can work this out, talk to planning and development, talk to the attorney, and really move forward with this. Thank you.
Councilor Murcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Because the purpose of this public hearing tonight was, do we support this ordinance, or are we going to send it back to be retweaked? We're retweaking it now? That's not what this is about. This is not what this is about at all. First off, the suggestion to put an ADU with 2 bedrooms, I'm not ready to tie that in with everything else. I'm not even supporting that. I say, let's stick to the purpose of why we're here and vote. Do we want this ordinance as is, or do we refer it back to where we could retool it and define it and categorize it and then redo it? That's my motion.
We
Mr.
have
Mayor.
a motion on the floor already. We need to take a vote for Councilor Noon's amendments motion first.
Half of it's illegal, Mr. Mayor. You heard what the solicitor, John, said.
After that, I will ask Councilor Noon if he wants to make any amendment. For now, I'm going to let all the councilors who would like to say, speak the second time speak. Councilor Drinkwater.
Just from a process standpoint, if we pass this amendment, we're not sending this straight into the code. It's my understanding, and I would ask for clarification on this through the city manager. I'm not sure if it's a law or a clerk question, but ask for clarification. Will we see a amended draft of this ordinance come back to the council for another vote as amended? Should we adopt amendments to the draft here tonight and pass this ordinance as amended? Will that then come back to the council to in writing to pass as amended?
Mr. Clerk.
I think if you amend this ordinance tonight, you've got to vote on it to amend it, and you got to vote on it to pass as amended. And the language of the ordinance will not come back. It will go forward as passage on that as amended. So there's not an ability to go back and work on the amendments. This was voted on, whatever that amendment language is, that's going to be included in that. It's not something that it's going to be vote for the amendment. It's just in favor of the amendment. You're going to vote for the ordinance as amended, and that will be your ordinance. There's no other option on that.
So with respect to the part of this amendment is to ask for a definition of a short-term rental to be added to the draft ordinance. I agree with that. That was something that came up through the planning board recommendation. And by the way, the planning board recommendation is made to the full city council. That's the process. It's how it works. Bill comes for, ordinance comes for first reading to the city council. The process is it goes to the planning board for a non-binding recommendation. They made a recommendation to the full city council, not to any subcommittee, not to DPD. They made a recommendation to the city council, which we are attempting to address through an amendment to include a definition of short-term rental, which we don't currently have. Process-wise, I would like to take a vote to adopt these changes. They may pass, they may not. But I'd like to see this ordinance with a definition of short-term rental come back before this council. If there's a motion to be made to have this draft come back as amended, then I'll make it. But I wanted that clarification because, again, the process is we get recommendations. We have on the agenda here tonight in 5.3, we have recommendations from the planning board. How are we supposed to act on them if we don't have an amended draft come back? So there's a motion on the floor. I'll support the motion on the floor to amend the draft, and if there's an additional motion need to be made to have this ordinance as amended come back before the council, I'll make it.
Mr. Mayor, roll call on the motion on the floor to amend.
Mr. Mayor, could I have a point of order? Could I have a point of order first?
So I had mentioned earlier, allow the councilors to state twice.
Well, you have the right as a council to have a point of order, so I'm asking for a point of order. That's Robert's
yes,
rules.
you may, but there's somebody who raised their hands before you.
Okay.
I will call.
Well, before they call them, I'm asking for a point of order. That's what I'm asking you for.
Yes, you may.
Okay,
after
thank you.
Another
Through
council.
you to the city solicitor, can an ordinance go through asking for a definition without it being defined?
Mr. Solicitor?
Can you add to an ordinance something that isn't even defined. That's the point of order.
So procedurally, there's a motion on the floor to amend. That needs to be voted on, either favorably or not. And then whether that motion passes, then you have an ordinance on the floor, either as amended or not amended. As the clerk said, then it would be up for a vote. But if that ordinance gets amended, and as Councilor Drinkwater just mentioned a few minutes ago, after that motion is either passed or failed, then he could make a motion to further continue the public hearing prior to a vote. So the answer to your question is you have to vote on this motion to amend. However that goes, then you could either vote it up or down tonight, or a councilor can make a motion to continue the public hearing to another date, and then your amendment, can be further talked about at the next hearing. And I just want to confirm that so I'm on the same page with the clerk. So you have a motion on the floor now that needs to be voted on. So you're either going to amend it according to the Councilor Noon's amendment, so then you have the ordinance as amended or not as amended. Then you're at that point. And then you either take the roll call and either vote it up or down, make a decision on this, or you make a motion to further continue it for another hearing based upon the amended ordinance. Does that answer your question, Councilor, or does that confuse you?
I just don't know what we're voting on because something isn't defined.
You're going to vote on the motion to amend.
I understand what you're saying to me is I'm voting on the motion before me, but within the motion, there's something that's not defined. So I'm not sure on what the motion
And
actually
use
is.
that accordingly to decide whether to amend it.
Thank you.
Councilor Yam?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to ask the solicitor on the amended proposed by Councilor Noon, if we cannot, on number 2, if we cannot limit a cap of 5, is there a better language that we can add to that so we can have Councilor Noon, amended his amendment? And then number 4.
No, can I answer that question first?
Yes, sir.
The solicitor is not going to give you an opinion on how and what motions to make on that. So there's a motion on the floor. It either stands up or down. But the solicitor is not going to give you an opinion on how to make a motion or things like that. You have a motion on the floor, and either you're in favor of it or you're not. But I can't give you more advice further on that motion on the floor as we sit here now. That's not appropriate.
Move the question.
Mr. Mayor, I called roll call on my colleague's amendment, please.
I have a point of order on this motion, if I may.
Councilor Jines?
Thank you. In April of 2021, I have in front of me a memo from Eric Slagle, Director of Development Services, in response to a motion by Councilor Elliott that talks about the definition of a short-term rental. As I'm reading this, it's defined as a maximum stay of 28 days. I would suggest to my colleague, Councilor Noon, that we simply change the amendment to use this definition of a short-term rental that's already in our code, and then we don't have something that's undefined.
Is that acceptable by you, Councilor Nguyen, to accept the request from Councilor Jines to use the prior definition?
Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the assistant city managers, is that really on the city code that defines short-term rental as stated by my colleague, Councilor Jines?
Through Mr. Manager to Ms. Ioanni Rose-Bays.
Mr. Mayor, there's a clarification to the memo that was just read. And in it, it says, since that time, given the lack of clarity, the Departmental Services has been treating short-term rentals as illegal in all zones in the city. It's the same memo that was just given. So it does not say 28 days. It says it was illegal in the city. That's the way it's been treated.
Ms. Bayes-Rose.
Short-term rentals are illegal in the city. That's how we've been maintaining the inspection of them, based on the definition of them having a certain like, we inspect, for example, like Airbnb is not allowed. So there is a definition in which staff is using to determine what is a short-term rental. And I believe that it is based on the memo language that Councilor Janess brought forward.
Mr. Mayor, giving the unclear, response from city managers, I would request that we vote on this amendment and let the managers have assistant city managers from DPD define that for the purpose of this ordinance. Thank you.
All the councilors have had a chance to speak. Before we do a roll call, I would like to make a brief comment from the podium. In the interest of time, I hope there's no objection from the councilor. I've heard, I did not prepare a speech because I came here tonight just to listen to everyone, listen to both sides, all the residents who spoke in favor, all the residents who spoke in opposition, and likewise from the councilors as well. And very, very few, the majority of speakers spoke in favor of having ADU, but they're just disagreement about how we are going to do it. I understand it's taken some duration already to reach this point. And something as important as this, I don't know if we ever going to have enough time to discuss it, but as a city, we are one city. We're making decisions tonight on something that is going to be very impactful to the entire city, to all the residents, to everyone, young and old. But as one city, we make decisions. It's not, and every tough vote in the city we have made, it's never been easy. Not easy for councilors, not easy for administration to have to carry out, not easy for the residents either, who really have the best interest of the city heart. But what we're all trying to do is move the city forward. And when you move the city forward, you're not doing only for one group of people. And not only just for the people who came to speak, there are many people who I'm sure who are very passionate about this issue, but they may not have the ability, the capability, the resources, the time or the know-how to come speak. They might not have any personality to come speak. But whether the people who came to speak in favor of opposition, there are many, many people watching at home, and many people who are not even watching, but they will hear about this. They feel very passionately about what's going on with the city. When we think about moving the city forward again, we want to do it where it's for the public good, right? For the public good, not for individual. You can't have a group of people, neighborhood, what have you, be satisfied with one policy, and other people are going to, lack of a better word, that might suffer from the decision we're making. So when we try to develop the city to make sure that we have sufficient housing supplies, to have good quality of life, we have to consider everybody. We have to balance development with the quality of life, and that's what we are trying to do here. Before we take a vote, I just want to clarify with the public as well as Mr. Clerk and the solicitor can correct me. We mentioned earlier, Councilor Drinkwater, one of the original make of the motion, he is welcoming amendments and is welcoming requests from the public to make changes. I don't think any of the councilors is against any amendments, any changes. So we're going to go through a series of motion now. With amendments, we have one amendment from Councilor Nguyen, and by the show of hands prior, there'll be other requests to make amendments. After we take votes on amendments, we will take a vote on the agenda on the ordinance to adopt the ordinance with the requested amendments. Those will be taken at the end after all the amendments are requested and agreeable upon. With that said, we'll start with the first motion on the floor with Councilor Nguyen, and I know there's some concern about the time frame and things like that, and Councilor Nguyen was asked the city to answer the question to make amendment with the understanding of the cap to the unit as well. So with that said, I'm going to ask Mr. Clerk to do a roll call on the First Amendment request. Mr. Clerk?
Mayor Chow,
Yes.
Counsel Drinkwater,
Yes.
Counsel Getchia,
No.
Counsel Janess,
Yes.
Counsel Leahy,
Yes.
Counsel Mercia,
No.
Counsel Noon,
Yes.
Counsel Robinson,
No.
Counsel Rourke,
Yes.
Counsel Scott,
No.
Counsel Yem.
Yes.
Yeas have it.
Council Robinson, you had your hands up earlier.
I make a motion that we vote up or down the proposed ADU with the passed amendment. The proposed ADU ordinance that the public meeting was on with the amendment that just passed. I make a motion, we take a roll call vote on that right now.
Okay, motion by Councilor Robinson to adopt the ordinance with the amendments. Second by Councilor Mercia. Any other comments or questions?
For clarification, though, we vote this, even with the amendment, it doesn't come back. Any amendments doesn't come back. So the vote that was just taken to accept the proposed amendment, this document's not coming back either way, right? So this will be the final?
Mr. Manager?
Because I mean, we're sitting here throwing amendments out at the floor like was discussed. And then all of these amendments.
To answer that question, you made the motion to amend it. The ordinance is now amended. So the motion is to vote this ordinance as amended. That's what you're doing right now.
But I'm saying, the alternative was if we would have sat here and each took turns trying to make amendments to this, as the amendments got accepted or whatever, we would have to still vote the full document and we wouldn't get a chance to see it back because it was already approved at that point, right? So if there was any problems with it or anything, we'd have really no recourse because it would have already been voted to be approved. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Councilor Drinkwater?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be voting yes on this ordinance as amended. And I just want to go back and point out, because it may have gotten lost in a lot of the process discussion that just happened. Councilor Noon put forward a motion with a very substantial change to this ordinance to address a lot of what was addressed here tonight. Just to repeat, part of the amendment that we just accepted was to make detached structures go through the special permit process rather than be able to build by right. That gets to much of what we listened to tonight, much of what was brought up at the planning board, and gets to a lot of the concerns that were brought up. And I just don't want that to get lost in the past number of comments that were made. It's a very big change to this ordinance, and one that I think is very fair. And I, again, don't want that to get lost on anyone. The other thing is, with respect to the definition of a short-term rental, what the director of DPD and the assistant city manager just said is that there is currently a definition of short-term rental as being enforced in the city as illegal. Short-term rentals are not legal within the city of Lowell. That's currently being enforced. Therefore, there's a definition. I think what this amendment will do is just bring that definition that exists within the city code that's currently being enforced to ensure that short-term rentals don't exist in the city and put it in this ordinance so it'll exist there as well. So with that explanation, I'm satisfied that I know certainly what we're voting on, this ordinance as amended, and do definitely intend to vote yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments? Councilor Scott?
Yes. I'd just like to comment about moving forward with it as it is. I think we're missing an opportunity here to address issues around parking, which are grave issues within our neighborhoods. I think there should be at least one parking space per unit and some minimum number of existing spaces required. I think that we are missing the boat on not adding setback requirements. Like I said, someone can just literally be building on your property line, moving in on your property line. And I also think that parking should not be subject to relief of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I think that's something that we can add in for language. So I am definitely voting no at this point. Thank you.
Councilor Kishia?
Mr. Mayor, again, I think there's some inaccuracies being stated. There is short-term rentals in the city. It says back then, when Mr. Slagle wrote this, it said there were 28 properties registered as short-term rentals in Lowell. There's a link for them. So there has to be a definition somewhere, and it says they treat them as illegal, but there's really it's a lack of clarity. That's why they're treating them that way. Through you to the DPD director, is that your understanding of the short-term rentals?
It's sorry. It's my understanding that in that memo, there was a proposed change to the definition of, I think it was transient housing. It's not right in front of me. That was being used to define what is short-term rental.
So currently, how do you treat short-term rentals? What is the policy of the DPD for short-term rentals right now?
It is the policy of the city of Lowell that short-term rentals, like an Airbnb, are not allowed.
Thank you.
Councilor Murcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we reiterate that part about the ADU having 2 bedrooms? Is that what I'm understanding the vote would be, as one of those amendments? Who's the maker of the motion?
Councilor Noon.
Councilor Noon. What are you saying?
Maximum is 2 bedrooms, just for clarification.
Thank you, Councilor Murcia. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the amendment is to limit number of bedroom to 2.
So let's say we're limiting the number of bedrooms to 2. So therefore, 2 people sleep in 1 bedroom, 2 people sleep in another bedroom, each one of them have a car. One can park a car in the driveway, because that's what the ordinance says, so the other 3 vehicles are on the street. Good luck to anybody that supports this motion. You just destroyed the character of the neighborhood, and I'm not supporting it.
Any other councillor who have not speak yet on the motion on the floor that would like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to withdraw my motion to take a roll call on the amended document. If we're gonna have to, if this is our only opportunity to go through and address these individual concerns that have been raised, I guess we're gonna have to go through with any concerns and have it voted by our colleagues.
So you are withdrawing your motion
To vote this document as is, amended.
with the amendments? That was your motion earlier.
My motion on the floor right now is, the amendment from my colleague already passed.
Correct.
I made a motion to vote up or down the amended proposed ordinance. I'm withdrawing that because I'm being told here, the only opportunity we're gonna have to put any safeguards in or address any of the concerns that were raised tonight and from the planning board is gonna be on the floor through this process, and we can't even get a straight answer here. So, I mean, if that's the only chance we're gonna get, then I guess that's what we're gonna have to do here, because as is, there's no way there's any safeguards really in place.
Okay. Motion by Councilor Robertson to withdraw the motion.
Withdraw, the person who made the second has to withdraw 2 minutes off.
Councilor Murcia, I believe you second. Councilor, would you withdraw as well? Agree to withdraw? Okay, that motion is withdraw. Any other comment? Councilor Scott?
I'd like to make a motion that we include language around 1 parking space per bedroom in addition to the required parking spaces for that existing lot. I'd like to also include that we do not include non-conforming lots to be able to be used for ADUs. I mean, we can't have lots that are 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square feet, adding additional density to the neighborhoods. I don't know if I should do them one at a time. Probably at this point. So right now, I'll put forward a motion on the 1 parking space per bedroom in addition to the required spots required right now in our ordinances.
Motion, just only one requires amendment.
Per bedroom. So if there's 2 bedrooms, 2 spaces.
Well, Councilor Scott, can you clarify again? 1 car per bedroom?
1
And the
parking
second one?
space per bedroom.
1 car per bedroom. That's one amendment right now, correct?
1 off-street.
1 off-street,
Correct.
okay. 1 per bedroom. If there are 2 bedrooms, there'll be 2 cars off the street.
Correct. Instead of 1.
Right. Second by Councilor Leahy. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Chop.
Yes.
Counsel Drinkwater.
Yes.
Counsel Getchia.
No.
Counsel Janice.
No.
Counsel Lady.
Yes.
Counsel Mercy.
Yes.
Counsel Newman.
Yes.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Counsel Roy.
Yes.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Young.
Yes.
Councilor Scott?
Okay. My next motion is that a second bedroom be required to go for site plan review to the planning board.
Second.
Second by Councilor.
To the planning board.
I'm sorry. Motion to, the second bedroom, if the requester requests a second bedroom, it has to go through the planning board.
Correct.
Yeah. Second
The
by
site
Councilor
plan.
Mercia. Councilor Drinkwater?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to vote no on this motion. Really, the onus of this ordinance is to make it easier to build ADUs and not create a hurdle for somebody to have to hire an attorney and appear before a land use board before they even know what the outcome will be. So you're asking working families to put forward a significant investment just to go before a land use board and ask for permission to be able to build a two-bedroom addition that, under all the other definitions of this ordinance, would be complying with the existing zoning. That's a hurdle that I think is too much for your average homeowner, working family to bear, and I'm going to vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Any other comments or question? Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Mayor Chop.
No.
Counsel Drinkwater.
No.
Counsel Getchia.
Yes.
Counsel Janice.
No.
Counsel Lady.
No.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Newman.
No.
Counsel Robinson.
Yes.
Counsel.
No.
Counsel Scott.
Yes.
Counsel Young.
No.
Motion fails.
Councilor Scott, any more amendments?
Okay. Of course I do. My next one is that an ADU cannot be built on a non-conforming lot.
Could you repeat that?
An ADU cannot be built on a non-conforming lot.
Second by Councilor Robinson. Any comments or question? Councilor Drinkwater?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may ask a question through the city manager to the assistant city manager, director of DPD, would it be possible, the way this ordinance is crafted, to qualify to build an accessory dwelling unit on a non-conforming lot?
I actually am going to ask Senior Planner Fran Sigliano to address that. Thank you.
I would just note that as someone who fields questions about zoning every day that I'm working, the vast majority of lots in the city of Lowell are non-conforming in terms of size with the underlying zoning district. The zoning districts, the minimum lot size doesn't match what's on the ground. Something that we're actually hoping to look into after Lowell Forward, the master plan update, and the housing production plan. It's a conversation that's come up. So in my opinion, including a provision that would require a property owner to have a fully conforming lot would disqualify the vast majority of single-family lots in the city.
So it would still, though, if I could follow up, sorry, it would still have to comply with all the dimensional requirements and setbacks, et cetera, the conditions within there. So the lot itself, it would be pre-existing non-conforming based on the current code. Well, it doesn't conform now, but the accessory unit would still need to comply with all the other dimensional and setback and parking requirements.
Correct. So the accessory structure that, as amended, would now be required to obtain a special permit to become an ADU would need to meet the dimensional standards for accessory structures that are already in place and already govern all of our accessory structures in the city. So that's a 5-foot setback from the side and rear property lines, 10-foot setback from the house, and no taller than 16 feet. So that would still apply, but Councillor Scott's motion is referring to the lot size, which is separate from the dimensional standards for accessory structures.
Thank you for the clarification, and I do believe that the safeguard that's built into this ordinance is the zoning as it pertains to the dimensional setback and parking requirements. So I'm going to vote no on this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Yam?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we put the lot size restriction, will be defeating the whole purpose of ADU by rights. As we know that about more than 70% of properties in the city of Lowell does not meet the lot size requirement. It was built in, way back in the 1900s. So I would also vote no on the amendment.
Councillor Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just say that's why I made the motion, because we have an extremely dense city right now with already lots that do not meet current standards, and now we're trying to put even more development within them and more congestion, more parking. I think if the space is there, I think we're being very lenient, allowing it to be conforming lots. Other towns, cities, they use much larger lot requirements than this. I think this is just really not opening a can of worms by allowing too much in the neighborhoods.
No other. Councillor Kishia?
I agree with Councilor Scott. When you look at Tingsboro, the minimum lot size, you look at Drake, and we were always comparing to other communities. You look at the minimum Tewksbury, an acre. We're not asking for a lot here. We're just saying that meet the current requirements. That's also, I agree with Councilor Scott. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's 10 o'clock. We'll do this one last roll call, and then we'll take a separate vote to go beyond 10 o'clock rule. Mr. Clerk?
Mayor Chow?
No.
Councilor Drinkwater?
No.
Councilor Getchia?
Yes.
Councilor Janice?
No.
Councilor Leahy?
No.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Noon?
No.
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
Councilor Rourke?
No.
Councilor Scott?
Yes.
Councilor Yem?
No.
Motion defeated.
It's now 10:02. We need a motion to waive Rule 5 by Councilor Robinson, second by Councilor Drinkwater. Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Mayor Chow?
Yes.
Councilor Drinkwater?
Yes.
Councilor Getchia?
No.
Councilor Janice?
Yes.
Councilor Leahy?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
No.
Councilor Noon?
No.
That's it. Two nays is defeats it.
All you need is...
Motion fail. We have a lot still on the agenda. Normally, Mr. Clerk, we table this to the next meeting to continue the public hearing, or
Yeah, we'll have to
we're in the
continue.
middle
Yeah,
of public
it's
hearing.
everything.
So it'll be to next
August
Tuesday.
8th.
Okay, August. Mr. Manager?
What happened?
Yeah, it's over.
Before do we have any votes that have to happen tonight?
We didn't vote.
Waive Rule 5 wasn't waived, so.
Could have a motion to have a special meeting. That's all we can do. So, we're done, right? Okay. Motion to adjourn by Root, yeah. Second by Councilor Robinson. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Motion is adjourned.